Greets, Vault Dwellers, and welcome back to Vault Talk, the show where we recap and discuss each episode of the Fallout TV show on Amazon Prime. This week we'll be discussing Episode 8, The Beginning. Kind of a interesting name for the last episode, don't you think?
Was
Absolutely.
the first one called The End?
First one was called The End. I like how they wrap it up, make a big old circle. With me tonight, you just heard Andrew. How are you doing, Andrew?
Hey, Jess, what's up?
And we have Will. Hi, Will.
Hello.
And Ray.
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy, Ray. Ray, are you excited to get into the beginning of this show?
Yeah, you can never resist a good beginning.
Exactly. So I'm not going to go over a summary of this episode because this episode, as we were discussing pre-show, is a bit of an info dump. We get so much information, so many threads coming together. I feel we should just go through it and we'll tie up these revelations as we go. But for those who don't know, this is the 8th and final episode of the show. It's all been leading up to this. This may not be the last episode of Vault Talk. We'll decide. But there are still some vignettes and other things that have been coming out after that might be fun to get into. But for now, this is the last main series episode until second season comes out. We don't have a date yet, but it has been renewed. So that's super exciting.
It'll take 2, 3. Well, if Bethesda has anything to do with it, new season in 12 years from now, right?
Yeah, after the Skyrim TV show.
On its way. Hold your breath, everyone.
So for this episode, Will, you've been getting the directorial and writer credits for us. Did you get those again?
I did. This one was directed by Wayne Yip, who some of his other notable directing things have been Utopia. He did episode of Doctor Who.
Oh, I love that one. Okay.
Four episodes, and definitely an Amazon Prime connection here because he did 4 episodes of The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, as well as 2 episodes of Wheel of Time. So
the Amazon is strong with this one.
Yes, it is. And it was written by, and well, actually, Andrew, did you notice anything different about this episode? Probably I'm leading you on here a little bit too much.
Writing wise, let's see. That means we're talking about dark comedy, something. Let's see. Who could be the special guest writer this week? Let's see. I don't know who we got.
Well, so you're on the right track. It's actually more of a lack of comedy in this one. Not to say there wasn't its moments, but all the other writers we've mentioned have had their comedic chops, I guess. Mm-hmm. This was written by Lady Gerstram. Hope it's going to be hard.
Lady Gaga.
Gerstram Sandhu. She's most well known. She did a short called Homecoming, which it won like 5 different film festival awards, and she was a staff writer, not a full episode writer, on 6 episodes of Game of Thrones, as well as a movie. And this is a comedy, I guess. She was an assistant to the movie Get Hard that was Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart movie. So, but like all the other writers, as we said, they were like very, very comedic. This one is a little more serious.
That's awesome, Will. Thank you. Yeah, for those who don't know, Utopia, Doctor Who episode, that was the one with the future kind. Right near the end of Tennant and I think it's Tennant and Martha's run. So that was a cool episode, but that was a good 15 years ago. So he's been directing for a while. Well, let's jump in and tackle this one because there's a lot. We were talking earlier about the notes on this one. And on most episodes so far, we've had 2, maybe 3 pages of notes, except for Will, of course, Will. But this one, I think we have like our official notes. What, 5 pages here, Andrew? You just kept going.
Well, and again, we don't necessarily have to follow my notes, but it's just what I was noticing. And like everyone said, it's just giant info dump. So the last 2, 3 scenes, I was basically just, as the show was happening, describing using my vocal note thing. Basically every fucking thing that was happening on the
That's
screen.
the way to take, because everything was important. I had to keep pausing it myself. Yeah,
I did. I went back so many times, do the 10 seconds back things. Like, oh, wait, what was that word? Oh, what did they do? Oh, let me see that screen again. Oh, what was the robo thing? Oh, that's hilarious. Like I just kept going back and back and back. It took me 3 hours to watch this one episode.
How about you, Will? Same?
Oh, yeah, same. It was a while. A lot of pausing, like you said, and having to go back because, you pause so much, you miss or you lose your flow of thought, right?
Ray, your note strategy on this has been to not really take many notes, right?
Well, this time I have 8 lines of notes.
Oh, wow. So that's like triple what you usually have, right?
Yeah, early on I learned that just open Andrew's notes and add stuff as you go.
It's a quick refresher, right?
That's what I've been doing too. That's why they're kind of like, they're not just Andrew's notes, they're our notes now.
Yeah.
We add things, we clarify, it's fun.
Yeah. And then also go through and fix the audio translation errors.
It's pretty bad sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell was I saying? What?
The spelling earlier, oh God, there was one line I fixed in our notes where it was, oh yes, it's with the elder, where this is not the first time a brother in your company has fallen into misfortune. Great line. Love it. Correct? Had absolutely nothing like it. It was like, this is not the first time a brother something, porch something. It was just ridiculous.
It's like, are you speaking English anymore?
We can translate. Well, awesome. Well, let's dive into these notes we're talking about. One thing that's really neat about this episode, in some ways, the show is a little bit like a play in that it tends to be set in a location or two. On a lot of episodes, it's kind of static as far as like the major locations, one or two. And there's so much swirling and happening around it. And then you get the flashbacks. But this one, a lot of it is going to take place at this final, what's the word for it? The climax.
Observatory? Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
at the observatory, right. But at the observatory and this whole climactic location. But it starts with Max on a vertibird. He's looking very serious because he has given himself into the Brotherhood and claimed after they showed up last week and he was covering for Lucy's escape that he has the head. So he's been picked up. They're, of course, you assume suspicious because it was Thaddeus that called in, not Maximus. Yet they found Maximus there with a head making some kind of excuse. We don't know exactly what he said, but we can assume he's like, I have the head, take me to the cleric.
Yeah, those two knights that are on the vertibird with him, they are just like staring at him like menacingly.
They're definitely hovering above.
Yeah, and that was a well-directed scene because majority of that beginning scene is just, it's focused on Maximus and he's looking really nervous and, patting the head and, kind of, you're not really sure what's going on. And then it pans around and you've got those power armored knights, grimacing at him. And okay, yeah, no wonder he's so nervous.
Yeah, they're a little intimidating. Like you can't tell if they're grimacing in the helmets, but they're grimacing.
Oh no, you can tell by their head position.
And hear them growl.
Yeah, somehow you could tell through the helmet, yeah.
I feel like he's steeling himself here too. You know what I mean? He's building his resolve because he knows that this isn't going to last long. I mean, I don't think that he expects to get away with the cover of the head for long. They're not dumb.
Smoke screen just to let Lucy get 5 minutes to get away. I think that's all this was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, it's going to be more like several hours by the time they get him when he gets back. So they are bringing the vertibird back. He has a little flashback to Lucy and the little kiss goodbye and her running. And she's saying, find me. And so I think that helps. He's drawing strength from that and the whole, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to go. So they approach. They're going over a forest.
They go to Philly. Yeah.
Exactly. They're going over a forest and they're approaching Philly. And they radio in. You find out the Brotherhood has taken over Philly. They're saying the locals put up a bit of a fight, but so did we. And chuckling about it a little bit. The vertibirds come in and land. And Max is walking into Philly. It's cool. It was good to see Philly again. I'm glad we didn't just have that for like one episode with all the work they did on it, But you see locations that you recognize, a couple of storefronts. But now there are people standing around, lots of Brotherhood in their knight and squire fatigues and outfits. And you can tell that, they have taken over the town. Max is being marched through, and I wouldn't say that everybody's glaring at him or staring at him, but it's quite a procession. I do think that there is an air of suspicion, right?
I thought so. There were a lot of stern looks, it seemed like to me, his way.
Yeah, I think word probably spread pretty quickly that there was something going on here. And as we know, Max isn't the favorite son of the Brotherhood, at least among his crew. A lot of them who came in from the East Coast on the Prydwen, they don't necessarily really know him at all yet. So he's marched in and up to the cleric. And the cleric is now, he's up on a bit of a I'm not going to say podium, but he's almost like a bit of a throne situation he's got set up here. Did it remind you guys of in-game, when you can set up like a stairway to a defense platform? It was almost like one of those, but covered. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of trying to picture it. I mean, he's not a Raider King, but it felt kind of like a Raider King sort of throne. This one's covered. And so Elder Cleric Quintus is there. He's lounging like a Jarl in his throne a bit, very Balgruuf. And
Absolutely.
yep. And next to him is Maximus's good friend, Asper and Dane. So Dane is obviously there as the Elder Cleric's kind of right hand. Max strides right up confidently, and he kneels and offers the head. The faceless wrong head of some poor guy who was caught in a trap at KPSS before.
The mids.
He couldn't appreciate music. This guy, he had it coming.
He had a complaint.
So the head is offered and brought up. And meanwhile, the Elder Quintus asks, and where is your knight, Titus?
Yeah, because he says he's wearing the knight's red. Yeah, so where is the knight?
Right, exactly, like taking it like that. And Maximus says he's dead. Doesn't offer much more of an explanation right
He
now.
never does.
I mean, this time is maybe not the time for it, which this is a little more understandable. Right after that, the elder says that line, looks at him, looks askance, and he says, "This is not the first time a brother in your company has fallen into misfortune," referencing Dane's foot before and the fact that people think that he most likely did that to Dane.
Oh, I thought he was talking about the knight that died.
He
with him
is.
the first
Yeah,
time. Okay.
he's saying the knight is not the first time. And there's also potentially Thaddeus. It's not mentioned here, but Thaddeus is a brother, and they're probably wondering.
Yeah, and they would most likely think he was dead. They wouldn't think that he was a ghoul and ran off.
Right.
So, yeah, 3 have entered, 1 have left.
Thaddeus did get away, right?
Yep,
So
Thaddeus ran off.
That's going to come back in season like 4 or 5, right? Thaddeus is going to pop back up as a ghoul in the scene.
I'm hoping so, because
That's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
I still want some more. What was it, Thaddeus?
Yeah, we need
Thaddeus.
Thaddeus. We need some of that Thaddy Daddy. When he's going to come back all ghoulified. We still don't know, like we discussed last episode, whether he is turning into a ghoul or it's something else. That's what he thinks is happening. But
Super shit.
So you got to imagine all of that is swirling in the air while he's being questioned. But meanwhile, I assume the scribe who took the head next to him is scanning it and says, "Nope, there's no artifact here." And of course, he's immediately starts to protest and stand up, and the knights behind him grab him and push him down. And he's begging for his
Put
life.
a gun to the back of his head.
He begs for his life. And yeah, does the elder say anything particular here?
I just think that's when Dane hops in, right?
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to be put to death, essentially.
He doesn't say anything. Maximus just starts, like chanting right away, because as soon as those dudes converge on him and he's like kind of pushed down to the ground a little bit, he's just like, "I can get you the real head, don't kill me. I can lead you to it. I can help you," and all these things. The elder doesn't really say anything else.
You'd have to wonder why he would expect the elder to believe him. He's been planning this for a while. Like, he did it for cover. When he first did this, when I was watching it before, I'm like, what does he expect to accomplish here if he sells the real location out? But we can talk about that in a minute. So before he can be taken away or shot, Dane steps in and talks to the elder and admits that they hurt themselves. What's the actual wording they used?
"Please, my lord, my injury was my own doing," right there.
Yeah,
So,
I love the formality that Dane uses. That's why I wanted to get the exact wording, because Dane is very formal like that.
And yeah, so she's just like, "For the sake of the brotherhood, listen to him."
So Dane knows that Max wouldn't be leading them astray, even though he brought back the wrong head, although Dane doesn't know the whole story yet. But the elder, I'm not going to say takes pity, but the elder's intrigued, and also this kind of changed the story, that if Dane did their own injury, if Maximus isn't just necessarily bad, there might be more to it. So scene ends, and it cuts to Maximus in a separate room, and the cleric is coming in and approaches him. And you can tell he's kind of interested and fascinated with Max now. "You have learned one lesson," or he said, "Power is taken, not given," is a lesson you seem to have learned.
Yeah, because he asked what actually happened to the knight. How did he die? And that's when Maximus says he died running away.
Right. I think that's what he means, clearly. He died running from a threat.
Yeah.
But the elder seems to once again take this as a sign of strength that Maximus stepped up, took over in the situation, and took over as knight.
Yeah, because I don't think the cleric would assume that Maximus was able to scare away a knight in power armor.
Right. And the whole fact, the way that he let him die, he probably doesn't necessarily suspect that either. He may be curious about the circumstances, but I think that he died running says everything we need to know, that Knight Titus wasn't worthy. But so the elder seems to be impressed by this and talks about how power needs to be taken. And then we learn more about his plans, that he wants to take power himself.
Yeah, because he said the Brotherhood has lost its way.
I'm still curious about that too. We know the Brotherhood here on the West Coast has lost its way a bit. They seem to be much more selfish, self-centered. They aren't really as focused on the mission. Quintus came on the Pridwin from the east, as far as we know, right? That he came with the Pridwin and he's the elder currently in charge of this operation? It seems to be. They never really clarify, do they?
No. Mm-mm.
So I've taken it all along that he is the elder in charge, that he was either charged by Maxon, assuming Maxon's still in charge in the east, or he is elder of maybe the local chapter, but more than just the immediate area, the camp where Maximus was. But he wants to maybe take further power and reforge the Brotherhood in the image he wants. He wants the Brotherhood to be dominant again. That's what he's doing already. Since he's been there, they spread around, just like when Maxon came to the Commonwealth in Fallout 4. The Pridwin came in, people of the Commonwealth do not interfere, but immediately they started sending out parties on vertibirds to clean things up, clean up pockets of ghouls, clean up resistance, search out synths and the Institute, even kind of requisition stuff from the local populace. As we know, that's how Maxon approached it. And that's really what Elder Quintus is doing too. You know, when they were looking for the target and they sent out multiple vertibirds, multiple directions, and now when he's taken over Philly, occupied, that's the word for it, he's occupied Philly. We don't know how many of the locals they took out, if many, but anyone who put up resistance. So it seems like that's what he wants. And he
the Ghoul had already taken out a few, so maybe it wasn't as hard for them.
Opened it up for him.
Maybe not that deputy's daddy unless he was a coward. Yeah. But he says he wants to be the head of the new Brotherhood and the like of you as its sword. So I still feel, obviously, that this is a strange take on the Brotherhood. They're as militant or more than Maxon's Brotherhood was in 4. They do seem to be more about power than technology. And the only reason that
religious guys, right? From Fallout 1.
Yeah, but even they were more content to stay in their area. They worked with the NCR over time as it grew. They helped people locally, but at the time they were more like the Brotherhood in New Vegas too. They kept to themselves and they reclaimed technology, and they would help people if it was convenient, but it wasn't their goal. Whereas I don't feel like the Brotherhood now is really out to help people at all, at least not with Elder Quintus in charge.
No, you call the Minutemen for that.
So that pretty much wraps the scene. You see Max taking all this in. There's once again, a lot of acting from Max where you're still wondering what is he thinking and what is his plan. But he does tell them where you can find the head, and he tells them about Moldaver and that they need to go to the observatory. So my thought is here, it's not that he's turning on Lucy and doing this just to save his skin. It's that, as far as he knows, Lucy is going into the lion's den. You know, Moldaver is a raider and a bad guy. Lucy needs to rescue her father. She wanted him to bring Nice to help rescue the father. If Maximus shows up, they can bust in. They can rescue Lucy if she needs rescued. They can rescue the father if he needs rescued. Get the head, save the day, all that, and then Maximus can escape with Lucy. I figure that's his plan.
Yeah, because he had committed to providing knights,
right,
in her endeavor. So,
and we know, as we're going to see, that she's taking it on her own way. But Maximus wants to be there to help. You know, he wants to be a hero. He wants to ride in on a horse or a vertibird and save the day somewhat. So, speaking of Lucy, we switch from this scene over to her. Lucy is coming up to a kick-ass car gate. It's very much like we get in a couple of the games, a little bit like Megaton, but very much like a cool car gate that we have in Fallout 76 right now, with cars braced on the side and a gate that pulls open. And she approaches and calls out that she's here to see Moldaver. She has the head. She has it on her. And it opens up, and her Pip-Boy, ding.
Yeah. You have arrived.
You have arrived.
I thought it was funny, actually, to go back a couple of episodes. Yeah, I'm sure it was unintentional. But, you know, when she first did the tracking device to find the head again, to relocate it, there was one scene where she's looking at her Pip-Boy to do it and is tracking, and it just showed a head in the Pip-Boy, like not a location or a full body or anything. It just showed a head, and I was like, oh, that's too cute.
Was it that classic dead Vault Boy head?
It was just a normal head. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Can only imagine how stanky that thing must be at this point.
Oh, the head?
Yeah.
Very, very nasty.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. So here, sorry to distract us, the Pip-Boy dings and it says you've arrived at your destination. So
I like that little, that little happy-go-lucky Vault Boy touch there. Vault Boy walking, we get the ding. The sound actually sounded like when you select somebody in VATS, kind of. It had that kind of click, ding kind of sound to it.
Yeah. And of course, the Vault Boy in the Pip-Boy is doing a thumbs up, right?
So she walks into the gate, escorted, but not really closely, but escorted by 2 soldiers. And as you go in, surprisingly, and I bet surprisingly to her, although maybe she started to suspect from what she's seen, this isn't really a raider camp per se. She's going into a cornfield, much like her home where she grew up, walking through this cornfield, and then kids run by. She sees kids, children's families. First time she's seen families really out here much, because I don't think we saw families around Philly. Has she met any children in the wasteland?
I don't really remember any.
I feel like this
But
is maybe...
she has kind of a deja vu moment because she feels the sun on her face. And, like she had described it before, thinking that it was just the big spotlight inside the vault.
Right.
But now we realize that, she actually has felt the sun on her face in a cornfield before.
Absolutely. She's feeling that here. And because that flashback with her mother and the corn and the sun is always in the corn, it's perfect for that. It's the exact same feeling. But she gets that feeling being at home and the kids laughing. And then it's just a village scene. There are people talking, there are people working, some people getting food. At the table there with food, one of the ghouls that she rescued from episode 4. Do you remember in episode 4 where she let all the ghouls out of the Super Duper Mart? And the last one that comes out, before Martha, of course, before Martha and the feral ones. But the last one in the black suit runs out and he's like, thank you, and runs to the left. That was him behind the table there.
Yeah, the pasty white one.
Okay, I missed that. I was wondering, because he was looking at her extra close and intently, more so than the other settlers. I totally missed that.
If you had subtitles on, he said, that's her. Like just kind of whispered lightly, that's her. And he's talking to the guy next to him, which I almost felt like I recognized the guy next to him too. But I don't remember from what, so I might be making that up. But this whole thing, I think, is kind of throwing Lucy for a bit of a loop because it's not necessarily what she expected to find here. She expected a camp of raiders, and yeah, these people did raid the vault and kill some people. She knows that. But between the people in Vault 4 and their worship of Moldaver and her helping people, she might realize that there's more to the story.
Yeah, well, and it brought the question to me is if she has all these like sort of armed people there that are regular settlers and armed, why did she bring the raiders to get into Vault 33 through Vault 32 and stuff? Like,
it makes you wonder. I mean, I don't know if she hired mercenaries.
Yeah.
Or if, some of the crew is close to raiders, like as much as she's trying to establish or reestablish the NCR government, it takes all kinds, and she brought some of the more vicious people with her who were, with tales of loot or whatever that she used.
Yeah, I guess I'm intend to agree that it was probably more like mercenaries, like she just hired some raiders as to be a distraction while she used her regular crew to get in, get Hank, and get out.
Right, along with her regular crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get Lucy's scene here. She's approaching the observatory and heading in. Switches back to the Ghoul and CX-404. And they're also in the wasteland walking. So now we've got all 3 of our main characters. And he's working his way to the observatory in the shot. As he walks, it flashes back to Cooper in the past again. He's just lost in thought and remembering. And you feel like Cooper spends a lot of time in his own head. He's got all these great one-liners, but I think he spent most of his life, the last couple hundred years, alone and time with his thoughts. So we're seeing him, and he's driving up with Barb. You see a Vault-Tec office building, a cool-looking skyscraper. And he pulls in and he says, sorry, honey, sorry about your car. And she's just, thank you for bringing me into work. And a lot of guys like you wouldn't want to get their hands dirty. So you realize, hey, Cooper is driving her into work because he tried to change the oil on his car. Something went wrong, and he may have manipulated the situation to make that happen. It's kind of what I'm thinking. He wanted an excuse to drive her into work. because he wants to eavesdrop with the device that he's put on her Pip-Boy. So as they're getting out and she's getting out of the car for work, Bud Askins drives up. Meep, meep. And he's in a little Fusion Flea type car. What did you call it, Andrew?
A briefcase car, just because the way the lid opens.
It was kind of funny the way it opened up right up, kind of like a clamshell or something.
It's like half a DeLorean, right?
Mm-hmm. But they're tiny. I wonder how you'd have to get in and out of an actual Fusion Flea, wouldn't you? Like, would the whole thing rock up like that, maybe?
What do airplanes do? Do those cockpits go back or forward when they open?
I think they go
Like,
forward.
I have no idea. I've never got to do a jet cockpit.
Yeah,
Sort of lift and slide back, don't they?
the center section slides back.
What about the old ones that like just?
Yeah, same thing. The P-51s and the P-48s and stuff like that. They had sliding cockpits.
All right, so none of them lifted like I thought. I'm an idiot.
No, I think I've seen some where the nose tips forward a little bit, like you're saying. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about in the Wasteland, a lot of the Fusion Fleas do have doors on the side, but I feel like there are a couple different models, and I feel like some look like they have all the way around a bit of a line
Yeah.
where it might pop up like that.
You just wouldn't want it to lift up from the front, in case you didn't get it closed quite all the way and it flies off while you're driving.
Yeah, well, the cars do that all the time.
It's like those cool recumbent racing bikes, like the racing bike trikes thing that are kind of that shape too.
Put cool and recumbent in the same sentence, you guys. I actually love the recumbent, yeah, but I've never heard them referred to as cool before. But yeah, I'm with you. I love the recumbent.
I kind of thought they were cool.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always heard my biking friends like chuckle at them,
So-
like, oh, one
okay.
of those recumbent folk again.
The ones without a frame, like where you're just out there kind of laying back, like biking. Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit hipster. But
I like them.
there are some racing versions that actually have a fiberglass shell.
So
it's like
awesome.
You're in a recumbent rocket, and those are the
No
ones that are cool.
way.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
I wrote a report on that as a kid. That's why I remember.
That's perfect.
Anyway, Bud thinks he's cool too, because he pulls up in his little recumbent car, and he gets out, and his license plate, by the way, on this says Just Askin. His name's Bud Askins, but you can see it just kind of from the side. It says JST Askin, because
I
that's who
did
he
not
is.
even notice that.
So he is happy to see Coop. He starts chatting up Coop again.
Yeah, well, first Barb is messing with her Pip-Boy because after he had put the little piece in his ear, she was getting some static, and she's like, "My Pip-Boy's asking him," and he's like, "Oh, are you having a problem with your Pip-Boy or whatever too?" Or
IT.
Bud is like, "We can fix that. Take it to IT." So Coop starts to, I don't know if he was actually about to leave here. Like, I wonder if maybe he started thinking maybe it was a mistake, but he's, well, that's it. I'm off. I got to get out of here. I promised Janie I would teach her some roping or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, he does say rope. And I think when Barb makes that comment about getting some static or interference, that she says it's always transmitting. Like the transmitter always seems to be
Yeah.
on.
Always transmitting somewhere. I just can't figure out where.
Yeah, so I do think he wants to excuse himself from the area if he has to. But Bud leans in and they start chatting. And this is where you learn more about Bud's buds. So as we know, he's an HR R&D. Like that's his thing. Optimizing management and all that. And so what he's doing for all of his junior executives, all his assistant managers and junior executives and all these up and comers. I mean, this guy, he's got a plan for middle management. He's calling them Bud's buds. He's like, I don't have kids of my own, but they're almost like my kids. And
Practically the same thing. Yep.
practically the same. I'm sure it is the same thing. Absolutely, Bud. And what I just love is how he thinks of it, though, because once again, he's right back on the whole time thing. And he's like, many experiments, you won't necessarily live to see the end. You won't live to see out in the results. But with Bud's buds, my project will be on task into the future. Now, we don't really know that much about what his project is here, besides optimizing management. This is going to be very important in just a little bit. So Barb's heading in. Bud is walking in with her. They're going in together. Oh, they also say very important day as they're heading in. This is a very important day, big day. And they're going in and you hear Bud talking to Barb, and then it's coming in through Coop's earpiece. And he's saying, think we can all go out together sometime? You, me, and Coop?
Yeah. And because we had just mentioned like maybe he was about to call it off, I wasn't sure because it was like he was about to leave when they were standing there, but then that's when Bud comes over and
Mm.
starts talking to him. And I feel like annoying him because that's what he always does. He annoys Coop. I think that sort of maybe changed his mind back to like, no, actually I am gonna stay and and do this.
Yeah,
Fuck Bud.
yeah, he's on the verge of leaving this whole time. Ever since he had this idea of spying on his wife or Vault-Tec, he's always on the edge of, is it a good idea, is it not? He's thrown the earpiece away. He's removed stuff. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. Then he does again. So yeah, it doesn't take much. Well, once she gets in through the door, he's trying to listen, but he can't. He can't actually hear. So he's going to have to get up and go into the building too. And right as that happens, we cut and we get the Fallout logo. So this whole thing was just the intro.
But so I think there was a little bit of a miss there. So as they're walking up the stairs, you see three guys in suits and hats and briefcases walking out. And they looked like they were probably Vault-Tec salesmen, but they were wearing gray, wearing yellow.
That's too funny. That's the Vault-Tec salesman look for sure. So they should have put him in yellow. So the Fallout logo this time, it has a bit of a crackling transmission kind of lines thing, I think. Time they go with the theme. This one is the transmission cutting out for Cooper. How I look at it. So we come back to Lucy, and this is the main set piece for the show. So Lucy walks into the observatory rooftop, and there's a big hole in the side of the observatory where you can see over the whole wasteland. Looking out, you actually see like city old buildings in the distance. You see a large crater, which is probably supposed to be the crater where Shady Sands was before it blew up. You see trees off to the left. Like you can see a whole lot of the area that they've covered in the show. In the room itself, this is very, if I may say, video gamey, because it's staged. Okay, this is the kind of thing you'd walk into in a video game for the climax scene, because Moldaver is there at the table eating. Okay, for the confrontation, you've got a table set with all kinds of food. Behind it, you've got this ghoul who might be a feral ghoul, but is definitely one of the grodiest, closest to dead ghouls that we've seen. She's very decrepit. And she's actually in the chair. I don't know if you see now or later, but she's got a belt, even strapping her into the chair. So you got to assume that this ghoul didn't get there easily. So she must have been brought in and set up. You also have this large cage off to the other side behind Moldaver. And in that cage is Hank McClane, Lucy's father, who she's here to rescue. It's been 2 weeks now. I don't think that these people were hanging out here most of the time with ghoul strapped and sitting at a table of food and Hank in a cage. Like, can you imagine Moldaver trying to work here if this isn't like the headquarters, like main area, and Hank's there the whole time? Like, so I have a feeling that she was aware, and this is just conjecture on my part. I don't know what you guys think, but that she was aware Lucy was coming, or at least when the last day got word as she was approaching, and kind of set this up specifically to be able to meet with and talk to Lucy and convince her of certain things.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that ghoul could just live there permanently.
Not like ghouls need to eat at the table.
Yeah, or get exercise.
Yeah, I mean, it is tied to the chair and all that stuff, so I guess they can move the chair around, but I wouldn't imagine they would move it too much, unstrap it and everything.
So
the
do you
ghoul.
think
So I would
that she's
the ghoul
just there
stays
all the
a lot.
time?
Ghoul probably is.
Yeah, the ghoul.
Yeah.
The ghoul might be, especially when we learn more about
Hank
who
too,
she is.
because he's her captive.
Pretty heavy looking cage.
Yeah.
That just seems like such a video game or movie kind of thing
Yes.
where you've got the mastermind or the leader in there and they've got their captive, like Jabba and Leia. I guess I understand why Jabba kept Leia around, but I don't think I'd want Hank in the room with me, like in the cage the whole time I was trying to work.
Yeah, well, except she needs the information from him, which we'll get to later.
Right.
But maybe
Mhm.
she's working on him that whole time.
It's a bit staged to me. I'm just saying. But I can see
Yeah.
why you guys would say maybe not. So that's good to get another perspective there. She comes in and she's approaching Moldaver. And Moldaver gestures to her and says, "Come in." And she says, "It's my turn to host."
Oh, wait. The note says it's my turn to hose.
you heard somebody pause to interpret that? Yeah. My turn to host. Next.
Can hose them down too. It's fine.
Probably got us sometimes. But last time that Lucy came face to face with Moldaver, besides at the entrance when it was blasted, was at her wedding dinner when they were hosting her. So yeah, her time to host. Lucy is trying to be strong here and keep it cool. And she says, "I've had so many thoughts on what I'd do, how I'd handle this. And of course she has, right? Because she's here to try to get her dad back, get revenge, give her the head. And so she says, try to even stuff a grenade in the neck hole. Walk in here, blow everyone up. But it's not how I was raised. So like when she talked to Max early, talks a lot of Lucy's goodness. It's natural to her. But she puts a lot of her goodness at the base of how she was raised in the vault, the way her dad was, the golden rule. You know, she could never hurt an entire community, she tells Max, because I couldn't face my dad. She's not about here to walk in here and blow people up because that's not the way she was raised by her dad.
Ironically, huh?
Ironically. And so, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep things civil, she says. And I brought your friend just like you asked. Or just like he asked, actually.
Yeah, like he asked. And then she very civilly plops it down, this rotten head, right in the middle of her plate.
That was a good move. Yeah, right
The
on her,
mac
right
and
on her
cheese
noodles.
goes everywhere.
One mac and cheese leaked out of his ear.
So a little bit of petty. We're going to ruin dinner here. But given the smell of Wilsig's head at this point, probably ruin your dinner just being in the same room.
Yeah.
So Moldaver takes the head, and she apparently has this nozzle right on hand because she pulls out a nozzle like the one Wilsig used to inject. It's kind of like a needle extractor, turkey baster. I don't know. She sticks it in and sucks out the thing that was injected before that caused a spark and pulls it into a little vial. And she holds it up. And is this where she mentions that it's cold fusion?
Not just yet, because Lucy has, after she plopped it down, she's like, no, give me back my dad.
Yeah,
And
my dad
so-
will go.
And so Moldaver's, very well, but first, what if I tell you how I know your father and who he really is?
Tell
And-
you about your daddy?
Then, of course, Hank is like, no, Lucy, don't listen to her. And, Moldaver's like, you think your father was born in a vault, like you and your brother. And then that's it. She doesn't mention the
that's-
cold fusion, and that's basically the end of this
That's
scene.
as much as she gets to in the scene, right? You think
Yes.
your father was born. So it leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger again.
That
Which-
was one of the structural aspects of this episode, was that it seemed like there were less going from scene to scene to scene, but there were 3 scenes going on simultaneously that were like being flat. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's hard
all the way through. No, I know what you mean. Like, that's why I'm saying it's in a similar location. But there is a crescendo towards the end where it gets quicker. Kind of like in the big ritual scene in Vault 4, how that one happened and it got quicker.
when all the threads come together, right?
Mhm. But it is kind of threading this needle here. So, yes, you think your dad was born in a vault like you, but he wasn't. And then, coincidentally,
Right.
we switch over to a vault.
Right. Well, like you and your brother.
And your brother.
So that's her brother, which we suddenly see.
And he's there where we last left him in Vault 31. And you see the 31 on the wall behind him. He's coming in, and there was that jostling in the stuff in the hallway. So he gets closer, and it's still moving. And the thing is talking to itself. Do you know what he was saying again? It was essentially kind of some kind of management mantra.
Yeah, first he's like, okay, you're going to get it right this time. Keep trying, keep getting it right. And he keeps saying, okay, you're the key to the future of humanity. You are the key of the, nope, got it. All right, okay, this time, you're the key to the future of humanity. Gosh, and he's like, says it over and over and over. The key to the future of humanity.
That's how he's talking himself up, I guess.
Yeah.
You can do this, bud. You're the key to the future of humanity. So as we get in, we see it is a brain floating in a Roomba. Which it's funny, I was calling it a basic robo-brain, but it turns out it's actually subtitled as Brain in a Roomba.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, that's why when I read that, I changed its name in my head to Roombud.
Roombud. That's so funny.
Since his name's Bud. Well, we learned very quickly that it's actually Bud Askins.
Yeah,
So-
that is Bud. Because we hear the voice coming in. We'd recognize that chipper attitude anywhere. That's one thing I like about Bud. Like, he is, I think he is a bit of an evil mastermind, even if he's a slightly bumbling one. But he's got that cheerful, can-do attitude. I kind of like it. I'm
That
good.
evil can-do attitude.
I'm glad he's not one of my managers, okay? But at the same time, anyway. So he's stuck under a broom and among these boxes, wiggling back and forth, trying to get out. And Norm reaches in and lifts up the broom and lets him free. And he pulls out and he's like, oh, thank you, Betty. Wait a second. You're not Betty. And immediately scans him. up and down with a cool blue light. And so he scans quickly. You're not Betty or Hank, but you are 50% of Hank's DNA. And Norm says, yes, I'm his son. And
Son of Hank.
I'm his son. And he's like, oh no, this won't do it all.
Yeah,
No,
he starts
no.
freaking out. Yeah, no, like all panicky, and then he's like, initiate protocol 53.
And pulls out a syringe. And of course, he starts to move forward, but Norm could just step to the left.
Very slowly, casually just moves to the left. Yeah.
And wait, hold still. And of course, Norm is moving and ignoring him and going forward.
Not hard to outrun a Roomba.
And Bud says, hold still, don't access anything. Don't read anything here. You'll never know. Basically telling him exactly what he should do by saying don't do it. Right? Like he's like, don't turn on the lights, don't read the terminal.
And now he knows.
And then he gets stuck again.
Yeah, and Norm asks him, who are you? And it's like, I am not going to answer any of your questions until you let me inject you with this. And he's still trying to.
I assume it's deadly poison, right?
I guess.
I assume Protocol 53 will kill him. So Norm gets to the terminal and the door opens and he goes through and then the scene cuts again, right? Back to Cooper going into the building.
You see a couple of movie posters that he had been in on his wall, a couple of different ones. You hear him talk. First thing you hear is like, any idea when Barb will get back? And he's walking in with the receptionist. So you get the impression that he's in Barb's office.
Right. Yeah, which she's made homey, customized it with pictures of her husband and such. The secretary says, Barb is in a meeting right now. And so he asks if he can wait. And she says, you can wait right here, Mr. Howard. And then mentions, of course, one of Barb's new assistants, Henry, is a big fan. Cooper says, yeah, he's called the house and he'd really like to meet you. And so Cooper, of course, he's got more important things on his mind right now. But he says, always happy to meet a fan. So he settles in. The secretary leaves, who looks a little bit familiar. Of course, she's supposed to look a little bit familiar.
I did not notice the first time. I guess we'll talk about it in a second when we get there. But yeah, like my first watch throughs, I totally missed the familiarity, if you will.
Well, she is a different actress than we have. But I mean, the thing is, this is Betty, which Cooper says, thank you, Betty, to her when she comes in.
Amazon even gets slick in here because they don't even put her name when you pause it and pull up the characters.
They don't?
They only put the actress's name, which it was like Princess Ray or something like that. And so it's only the actress's name. So like, had no idea who it was. But then later on, when we learn under her name, like the actress's name, they put the character is Betty Pearson.
So anyone listening this far, obviously you guys probably have already seen the episode at least once. And so you know the big secrets here. So we're not revealing anything. We've tried hard last episode, cards on the table. Yeah, Betty Pearson here, young Betty Pearson, happens to be secretary at the Vault-Tec offices. So she leaves and Coop now is finally alone. So he's looking around furtively and he puts the earbud in to start listening to what's going on. And it cuts to a bit of a boardroom, a bit of a war room, as it were. And it's a top secret Vault-Tec meeting. And we see 6 figures in the meeting seated at a round table. And I mentioned the war room because it doesn't have that Dr. Strangelove kind of feel. I mean, it's smaller.
Yeah, a big video screen map on the back. And...
Exactly. Yeah, and in a circle with an open center. And sitting around the table, we recognize Bud Askins and Barb from Vault-Tec. And they've called the meeting. But looking around the table, you've got someone from West-Tec is there. It's Leon Van Helden, who, if I remember right, he was one of the guys working on the FEV project at West-Tec. So he's there representing West-Tec. For Big MT, you have Frederick Sinclair, which we know Sinclair not as an investor in Big MT, although he was, which is why he is here, but he was the owner of the Sierra Madre Hotel, which should ring a bell for some people. The hotel in Dead Money, that's Frederick Sinclair. So we've seen paintings of him older too. I think he was actually a bit more, he wasn't quite so portly. In the pictures, in the hotel, he's a bit younger and more dapper, but one can assume vanity. He did pictures of his younger self. And then from RepCon, we have Julia Masters. Con, as we know, does rocketry and robots. And interestingly enough, they were actually purchased by Robco shortly before the Great War. At this point in the story, I don't know if they're already owned by Robco or not. They might operate as a separate subsidiary, but I'm guessing this is before the purchase went through. Julia Masters is the CFO for that company, finance officer. And then, of course, from Robco, you've got Mr. House, who is the CEO and founder. And most people are familiar with Robert Edwin House at this point, which is why it's called Robco, by the way, after Robert is his first name, Robco. A lot of people think it's because of the robots, but I think it's because of his name.
That's what I thought. I had no idea. Wow.
So Robert Edwin House, who I believe is supposed to be born last year, like we're right on the time that he would actually be born in the Fallout timeline. But he's the genius who started Robco, and he's here too.
Repcon is the rocket company in New Vegas, right? With you send the ghouls to space. That's Repcon?
Yeah.
Yep.
Are they mentioned in any of the other Fallout games?
I'm pretty sure Repcon is mentioned in some of the other games.
Okay.
Was ArcJet in Fallout 4 where you go with Dance? Was that a subsidiary of Repcon? I feel like they're all kind of incestuous there. Well, that might not be the right word, but you know what I mean. Well, I mean, I'm actually going to look that up real quick. Repcon.
Throw us off a tangent.
No, this is a great tangent. This is the kind of stuff I like getting into more, how it relates to the games, because not everyone knows. So Repcon Aerospace, Rocket Engineering and Production Company of Nevada is where the name comes from. REPCONN. They're based out of Henderson, Nevada, and they did production of alternate fuels and rocket manufacture. Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, they were purchased by Robco. It looks like Poseidon Energy tried to buy them too. Okay, so no, they are separate. They don't have anything to do with ArcJet. My mistake. Just two different rocketry companies. But we're seeing some of the big movers and shakers here on the West Coast. But there are so many others that could be here too, like Poseidon Energy, for instance. But obviously Red Rocket, the Nuka-Cola Company, General Atomics. There are any number of huge companies that could be at this meeting, but these are just the ones that Vault-Tec seems to have a partnership with and work with. And they're also more local in the case of Repcon and Robco. Anyway, secret meeting. So Bud starts talking. He's leading the meeting, talking about why they brought them here. Is it Mr. House who jumps in quickly and says, yeah, you brought us in here because your sales are down? And
yeah, it's the big MT guy that says that.
Is it Sinclair?
You know, your sales aren't up to snuff. And then it's Mr. House makes a snide comment. I was like, oh, what do you know? You couldn't make a profit in a casino, or if you owned a casino or something like that.
Right. Which is funny because, of course, he does go on to own a casino and starts to lose money there. But Bud says, our sales are fine, thank you. And he starts to make a sales pitch. We brought you in here. We have vaults everywhere, but we want your help with our vaults. He goes into his spiel about what is the ultimate weapon of mass destruction, and time is the apex predator. What's funny about the way Bud does the speech here is this is very much what he talked to Cooper about before, and yet there he seemed like a goof. And here, he's actually very much coming at it as an actual manager, and a bit, I don't know, you get the feeling that this is a bit darker, immediately a lot darker, like the way everything he's talking about is cast. So he starts to make his sales pitch on why they should help with the vaults and how them investing in the vaults is the best thing for the future. But they immediately start disagreeing. Bud is essentially losing control of the meeting, and Barb is kind of looking around. And then her Pip-Boy, she gets a message on her Pip-Boy. She looks at it and then kind of looks up towards the theater, towards the window up top. We see a shadowy figure observing from above. She gets the alert. So she kind of settles herself, looks at the room, and brings in her attention. Gentlemen and women, let's refocus the conversation. And we flash back to Coop right there. And Coop is like, yes, Barb, set him straight. Because Cooper knows his wife is talking now, and she's going to get this meeting on track. So Barb starts off talking about Janie, why she cares about the future and this country, and she wants to provide her daughter with a better future. But from there, it cuts back to Norm. Is that really where it cuts?
Yeah, Barb is the last thing, like you said, she's talking about Janie and providing the future for her. And she's like, and how do we design our vault society so that our children have a better future? And she's talking hedging our bets. We need to hedge our bets.
Right.
And then that's when it switches over to Vault 31.
Perfect. We're back with Norm and the brain on a Roomba. And
That's edged.
walking into this room, and it lights up and it's ominous. You get light down this long hall and you're seeing all these, well, I call it a hall. It's more like a cavernous room. And there are all these tubes and like cryo chambers going way, way, way back, probably hundreds of people here.
You can't see the end of the hallway. It just goes as far as your eye can see.
Mhm.
One long fucking hallway. And who knows how many sideways branching ones as well.
Right. I mean, we don't know exactly, but there's a lot. And
and there's a lot of empty ones off to the right.
Yeah, there's a good 15, 20 empty ones on the right where there are people probably released. And
Were
Norm said
the doors open or something? I didn't notice.
the lights were slightly different. They were dark on the inside instead of glowing with a body inside. And
Okay.
I don't think the doors were cracked, but you could tell that they were not occupied.
Yeah, they didn't look like all the other ones. They kind of look frozen over, like there's like a
Mhm.
frosting to them, but these definitely look thawed out.
And it was like a specific grouping together. There weren't any like
Yeah, it
in
looks like they were
between
just
that were
Yeah, the
looks like
first
they were just
group on
going
the
right
right.
down in order.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first group on the right there is kind of where it is. Just kind of make it clear so that it was obviously visible to the viewers. Norm says, "Where's the rest of the vault? Where's the rest of the vault?" And Bud says, "This is the rest of the vault.
involved.
Buds." And he gets all proud here. And this is what Buds are. He says, "Junior executives following my training program because the future of the world comes down to one word, management." And you realize that Bud has preserved all of his junior executives in Vault-Tec and people in his program and their assistants and everything like that to repopulate, part of the repopulation
Yeah.
effort for the world here.
Yeah. And when he lit them together, when he sort of lit that little hallway up, he was like, "Is this where my dad's from?" And Bud's like, "You'll never find out." And then he goes to like push a
Uh-oh.
button, and yeah, Bud's like, "Oh no, he's gonna find out."
No, he found out.
Yep.
The best way to get into this and light the whole thing up.
There's a little bit of hopping back and forth, I think, but it sort of it goes back to Vault-Tec a little bit.
I want to head into something here then. So we get the idea that these are Bud's, and this is part of Bud Askin's contribution to the whole Vault-Tec plan. Because we think of all the vaults as individual experiments and what happened with them. But there was actually a larger plan to it. Vault-Tec really was trying to hold people and repopulate the Earth after total nuclear annihilation. Now, yeah, not all the vaults were going to be viable. They were running experiments in them. As we're going to find out, they allowed other people to help design and run experiments in them. But the actual mastermind of this certainly wasn't Bud Askins or Barb Howard. It was Stanislav Braun. And the name of the program that he ran, which you'll see all throughout the Bethesda Fallout games, it wasn't mentioned in the first two Fallouts, but in the Bethesda games, it's called the Societal Preservation Program. And Stanislav Braun was in charge of it. And that was the overall program for the vaults that they sold to the government, with 17 to 20 control vaults, and then vaults with experiments. But a lot of the goal of the Societal Preservation Program was to repopulate the Earth at some point with Reclamation Day. As the vaults here, they're all being groomed for, Vault 32 and 33, along with the Frozen People in 31. They're all being groomed for Reclamation Day, and other control vaults and special vaults were all being groomed for that too. And survivors at some of the vaults, the overseers that were actually in the know, that had programs for release, they actually did plan a real Reclamation Day. So people a lot of times to think, what was Vault-Tec's goal? Were they just evil? And yeah, but they actually did want to resettle the wasteland at some point in the future. And Bud Askin's program here is just part of it. So there were programs like this, not the same, of course, but like this all over, especially with the control vaults. Anyway, I wanted to kind of link that part to the game. If you look closely on some of the vault doors in the game too, you'll see along the band on the edges how they've got all the writing, and Societal Preservation Program is part of the lip on the door.
That's interesting.
So we head back over to Vault-Tec and back to Barb. And Barb is talking about this plan right now. She says, Bud has an idea for 3 interconnected vaults. We need your ideas. And she said, but in the spirit of competition that made all of our companies great, we should bring the same spirit of competition to our solution. And to that end, and the map behind her starts to light up, she says, we have over 100 vaults spread across America. And you see the vaults, boom, boom, boom behind her. Is it accurate to where the vaults are in the games? According to what we know from the Bible, what we know from the different games and references in the game, it's pretty close. People have kind of tried to match them up, and they found a lot of them.
Really? They actually cared?
Of course, Andrew.
They cared somewhat. I think we talked on the Fallout feed a couple weeks ago about the mapping project that Nikki is doing, the Fallout mapping project for Tunnel Snakes Full, and she's actually been taking this and putting it into a real geographical survey or geographical mapping software and hooking things up and finding a lot of them do line up. I mean, some of them are vaguely close, And there are definitely some missing. Like there should be a few more, I think, in West Virginia than you see on this map. There should definitely be more in California, I think, than you see on this map, from what we know. But these are some of them for sure. And I noticed, Andrew, there's no vault in Indiana.
Well, that's a bald face. Well, I mean, in that universe. And I know for a fact that we have vaults in Indiana. We have missile silos in Indiana.
I think the only one we have in Maine is down in Far Harbor, so I can't say much either. We know how that one went. The Robo-Brains.
Or something in there. Yeah, watch out. Some kitty paintings and stuff.
But so she goes on to entice them. She says, with that spirit of competition, we have enough vaults for each of you to claim several to create the perfect conditions for humanity. Because, part of what they were arguing about before is how will people even survive? Like, rats stuck together long enough start to eat each other. What if your vaults don't survive the people? And Barb's putting it on them. You want to make sure they do. And this is up to you to design the best experiment and best way for them to survive. You were going to say, well?
I was just going to say, when you're talking about the rats, that Mr. House brought that up. He talked about you keep rats together, eventually they start to eat themselves, up, which I thought was also sort of a callback to the video that was being played when Norm and Chet entered Vault 32 and they had the rat utopia on that TV where they all ended up eating themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good callback. Really good callback. And they throw a lot of these great lines on Mr. House too, because they know that he's a cool character.
He very much is, yeah.
And they want to make sure that he gets the good lines, which, oh man, I hope we see him in season 2. More of him and actually what's going on there. But another thing. So yeah, she says, whatever you want to do, no one needs to know and may the best idea win. So this is how she's selling them on it. And this is how we kind of learn more about the whole idea of vault experiments. Because up to this point, Vault-Tec was probably planning some, of course, with their researchers. We know how they're getting into this. But some of the more bizarre experiments or extreme experiments are the ones that seemed not very Vault-Tec-y. Well, you start to hear some of these other companies talking about them, about separating the adults and children, about use of hallucinogenics and who can survive as the strongest, purposefully overcrowding vaults, stuff like that. Which, in my mind, might be a way to weed out the strongest for some of these, but it doesn't really seem like a way to guarantee survival.
Well, very clearly, some of the experiments did not work anyways.
Yeah. I mean, not all the experiments, they weren't all testing the best way for people to survive. Some of them were just doing a weird-ass experiment.
Yeah, weird-ass project testing. Yeah, like these companies' personal whims. Some of it might be trying to advance the company's agenda.
My God, it's a soliloquy of product research management.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You talk about a captive audience for your market research.
Holy shit. That's great.
So they're discussing, but we go back to Norm. And Norm is kind of reeling with the revelation here. And he asks Bud, so are Vault 32 and 33 just people to be controlled? What are we? And Bud says, they're the breeding pool. People personally selected for their attitude and genetics to breed with my managers to create a race of super managers.
The ideal person for Bud, a human being in Bud's mind, right?
Friendly, willing. I mean, I think he even mentions ready to make iced tea. There's a reason why we were talking about how the vaults were extra Vault-Tec-y. Vault 33 was extra aw shucks, extra Pleasantville, extra like Bud, which is kind of how he's been this whole time.
Ew, what if they're all Bud offspring? Ew.
Yeah, well, there's that whole question of genetics in these vaults, but like we said, hopefully they had enough people to kind of keep it diverse. And they're bringing in the buds little by little. And they were always enticing them with the radiation starting to clear. Maybe we'll be able to go back to the surface soon. That was said earlier about how Lucy and Monty's kids might be able to walk out on the surface. And you have to wonder if they were simply waiting long enough for people on the outside to die out or, well, be killed in some cases. And when the time was right for them to actually emerge and take over. Bud says, super managers, people who will inherit the earth after we've wiped the surface clean.
Yeah. No, and that catches Norm off guard. He's like, we wiped the surface clean? What? Mm-hmm. And so he's in shock, I guess.
And we're back in the Vault-Tec meeting, and Mr. House speaks up. How can you guarantee results? This is all well and good, but peace could happen. How can you guarantee results? And in my mind, they're going to be able to start some of these experiments before the Great War. But in order to get the completion of them, in order to discover a lot of this stuff and find this future where they're in control, and everyone else is dead, how can you guarantee results? And Barb says, by dropping the bomb ourselves.
And I think Coop has the classic Alfred Hitchcock ringing in the ears moment, you know?
Mm-hmm. Pepper,
1,000-yard stare.
Barb is speaking horrendous things, and Cooper can't believe this.
Yeah. She basically did just drop a bomb herself to him, right? Yeah.
There you go. Exactly.
That's when Hank walks in, right?
Now, some people have taken this as evidence that Vault-Tec dropped the bomb, started the Great War. The way I look at it, and all we can see in the show, is that it shows that they were willing to, that this is part of their sales pitch, that they probably had access. You know, because Barb's getting information from shadowy people up in the wings as well, which we mentioned the one figure, who I'm guessing might actually be Stanislav Braun. I mentioned him. But on another view, you see multiple people up in the gallery. Like there are 2 or 3 figures up there in the gallery watching too.
Well, and to me, the biggest indication that maybe it's not Vault-Tec, maybe they would have, I don't know, but it's that Barb was very insistent, emphatic, talked about how much she loves her daughter and her husband, and she will do anything to make sure that she's protected. They clearly were not in a vault when the bombs were dropped.
No, yeah, her family was not there.
She should have known that, right? Like,
right. Even if she and Cooper were separated at the point, she would know. But yeah, there's evidence all throughout the games that
she
Vault-Tec
would
wasn't
save
ready.
Janie, even if she didn't care about Cooper anymore. Like
Multiple vaults weren't sealed, didn't have the important people in place, weren't ready. Vault-Tec executives and stuff were supposed to be there. So yeah, everything has always pointed to the idea that Vault-Tec wasn't ready. And so the bomb was dropped. So that's why I think in this case, they're showing that they're willing to drop the bomb. They're showing that they have access to some of the nuclear arsenal, at least, through power that they wield. But it doesn't say they necessarily are the ones who did. Barb goes on to say a nuclear event would be a tragedy. Yes. Like, ooh, bit of humanity, Barb. Good job. But the greatest opportunity, because there will be no one left to fight. A true monopoly, which is music to these guys' ears. Although, realistically, I have to say, if everybody else is dead and you've only got your captive audience, like, sure, you're in control, but who are you selling to?
right, there's no potential for growth.
So I thought that was kind of an odd thing. But they're very much talking here about no factions. And this kind of goes back into the whole war never changes idea that the show, I mean, she's even going to say that in a little bit. But with the idea that war never changes is that there's always another faction vying for dominance and fighting. And that's why there's so much conflict in the world. Max talks about it when he talks about how everyone wants to save the world. You have them here saying the same thing. You have Hank having this belief and Bud having this belief that they need to cleanse the earth and bring out better people, make a better world this way. And I just think it's woven all through this. But logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense because even in these groups, factions will develop. Every group eventually splinters.
Okie dokie.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, while Cooper's in shock listening to it, Henry walks in to meet Cooper, his idol. But
Well,
Cooper,
and this is where he calls her Betty, and like she's like trying to get his attention because he's in shock. He's like, Mr. Howard, are you right? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine, Betty. And then that's sort of like the reveal that it's Betty Pearson.
Betty. And then Henry is right there, and Henry says, I'm so pleased to meet you, Mr. Howard, big fan. Start talking about the shows. My name's Henry, but most of my friends call me Hank. And that's when it pulls around and reveals that, yes, this is Hank, Lucy's dad, too. Nicely de-aged, very Twin
well
Peak
done.
looking. Yeah. He looks like very Agent Dale Cooper from like 20 years ago, you know? But he's talking up how much he appreciated Cooper's movies, and Cooper's not really hearing it. Like Hank's mouth is moving. Cooper's only hearing a little bit. But one thing Hank says is how when he played that role in A Man from Dead Horse,
And you shot that guy in the face.
and he brings up the Feo Fuerte from El, and yeah, taking the wrong lessons from Cooper's movies, again, as we know.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, he hates that.
But that's where Hank is, and you get to learn a lot about Hank there too.
Mm-hmm.
Barb goes on about current societal structure, which formed without intentional guidance.
Yeah,
We
that's
have-
Barb.
We have friction, we have conflict, and war. And then she says the line, and war, well, war never changes.
That's so funny.
And well, they had to get that line in there because as great as the show is, fans may have revolted if they if they didn't have that line somewhere in this first season.
I cheered in my kitchen when that happened. Like I was in there, I was in my kitchen pouring a drink, Yeah, I was watching TVs in the room right there. I can still watch it. I went in to make myself a drink and it happened. I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow, so Barb gets to say it. Awesome.
Expect the
You know,
music to
I was
kick in. Da-da. Beginning of Fallout 4.
And she does it so strong faced too. Like just looking at her, like the strength of this whole speech. Like there's so much conviction. You realize she really is a Vault-Tec true believer. Or really good at selling the vision if she's not. You kind of feel like she's been playing Coop a bit this whole time. That she was converted to the Vault-Tec way, like, and Vault-Tec beliefs over the last couple of years that she's worked there. But Askins, I mean, might be in charge of the Southern California branch. It seems like she is reporting as much to the people at the top, the way she takes over in the meeting and does all that, that she's working with Bud and has her own agenda too, that they're striving for.
Well, the shadowy figure contacted her specifically, not Bud, right?
Right, exactly. Like almost like he was saying, okay, do the thing, make the presentation.
Did the other big wigs notice the shadowy figure?
I assume they knew that there were other people there watching or listening, but it's never acknowledged, I don't think, is it?
It's also possible they were behind them because Bud and Barb are at like sort of one end of the table and everyone's sort of sitting around the table looking at them, and Barb looks up to that window where that shadowy figure is or whatever.
So we go back over, we're back to Lucy now after all this.
Yeah, because they're showing to like solidify that the young Hank or young Henry is Hank. They're back to
It's right from young Hank to old
it's
Hank.
him. He's like, I hate to be that guy, but can I have your autograph? You know, and they're showing him it's a close up of his face, and then it switches to Hank, Overseer Hank, in the cage.
He's saying, I hate to be that guy. Could you let me out of this cage?
But what we saw was Moldaver's telling her her dad wasn't born in a vault like you. This is the first time we're back to continuing that conversation now after this big revelation. And we suddenly know that all these people are from the past. And she says, you remind me of your mother. And she was like you, kind, loving, curious. Lucy says, what do you know about my mother? You know, because this is another revelation for her. And she says, you're like her. Isn't that why you came to the surface? Partly to rescue your father, but partly because you were curious and needed to know what was out there. I think we're back to Max and Dane right after that, right?
Yes.
So Max is there. They're checking their guns. They're checking their gear. They're getting ready to all go out for the attack on the observatory to get the head back. Max is serious, but this is Max's first chance that we've seen to talk to Dane. And so he and Dane are talking, and Dane's apologizing. You know, I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. And Maximus says, thank you for telling the truth. And why are you coming on this mission? Dane says they're being punished for what they did to themselves and lying about it. And that they just didn't want to go out into the wilds. I think that's the word Dane uses. I didn't want to go out into the wilds. I was scared. So that makes sense. I had no idea they'd blame you for it. I'm sorry. Which that's kind of what we thought at the time. Like, because Maximus is Maximus, he seemed guilty. I think they kept it intentionally vague all along. And the others just blamed him because they would. Because, well, Maximus is suspicious. There's a reason why Andrew doesn't like him.
Is it just me?
No, I think it's a lot of you. Ray, how do we feel on Maximus?
Yeah, he's a whiny baby.
There we go. Will, Maximus?
I think I like him. Yeah, he's okay. I mean,
Okay.
you know,
You
he's
think
got his
his
flaws.
redemption arc is going to be the big season 2 thing?
Yeah,
Maximus
yeah.
coming around well.
You know, I have said I'm more of a fan of Thaddeus, but that's okay.
Yeah, I just Maximus is his own worst enemy. You know what I mean? We talked
Yeah.
about this a bit. Like that's my issue with Maximus.
Oh.
Takes.
I absolutely love Vault Maximus in his
Robe and
robe and
slippers.
slippers.
Waterfall and caviar days. So you smell nice.
Max says to Dane, "Don't be sorry. I was meant to go on that mission." Then he says, "I met someone. She's walking into danger, and I'm gonna go rescue them, and I'm gonna go with her to live with her in her home." Does he mention that she's from a vault here?
Yes.
Okay, she's from
Yeah,
a
'cause he's
vault.
like-
I'm
It's
gonna
like,
live
I'm
with
gonna
her.
go to a place that's peaceful and safe and nobody ever goes to war.
And Dane just looks at him and a bit sad because Dane can't believe in this fairy tale. Just like Max wouldn't believe in the fairy tale a week ago. And Dane says, "There's nowhere safe, Max. I wish there was."
And then meanwhile, like as they were talking, that commander, whoever, like kind of sort of comes in and interrupts their conversation. They go, "All right, maggots, move out," or whatever. Yeah.
I thought he said maggots. That's just classic. They go outside and they get onto the vertebrates, and the vertebrates start lifting off. And you see them moving out from Philly.
Yeah, they were flying the wrong way.
Were they really?
As they're flying towards the camera, you can see LA, Shady Stands in the background.
Oh, geez. So they got to turn around. I mean, it takes a little bit to turn that bird around. She's not quick.
You know, if you've ever flown from Dayton, Ohio to Cincinnati, you know that you sometimes have to take the longer loop around the outside of the city because the path is so short.
Funny thing about the Predwin, like you would think the Predwin would have a pretty large turn circumference, but in Fallout 4, when the Predwin goes across, when the Predwin actually arrives above the Boston airport, it actually finds its location and it just kind of spins in place into the position it assumes.
Like 6 hours later, then they get all comfy.
Take us a little bit, but yeah, it just kind of gets there and it turns slowly. That's the animation. You don't actually see it in the game unless you fast travel there, but
it's funny.
So we're back with Lucy, Moldaver, and her dad. And Moldaver's continuing to talk about her mom, because that's what they were last talking before they moved. And said, "Your mom was clever. She deduced someone was siphoning the vault's water supply. You know how she realized there was life out there? She deduced someone was siphoning the vault's water supply, and she supposed society had returned to the surface. And she talked to your father, and she talked to him about what she'd found. And he said, do you have the line, Will?
I can find it. Yeah, and when she told her husband, he said it was a ridiculous idea and that she should tell no one. You know?
Ridiculous.
And yeah, and that's when she realized that her husband, the overseer, was hiding things.
Okay, that's awesome. So yeah, she became suspicious of him and realized there was more going on. So she did her own investigation. She took the children, left the vault, and found a city. And it gets a little bit idyllic here, where we know the wasteland is far from perfect. Shady Sands was far from perfect. But she says the mother took the children and found a wonderful city that was the promise that the vaults wanted to be. You know, and your dad came after them. That was
hilarious.
Because, we know that it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
They built it up in her head. Well, they apparently lived in Shady Sands and met the mom and helped her and was helping her get resettled and taking care of the kids and all that. And then dad came after mom and she refused to return. So dad took the children and burned the city to the ground. And this is where you learn.
So we know Vault-Tec didn't use at least one of their nukes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
they left it for Hank to use.
I feel like that's kind of why it was important to establish that they had access and stuff.
Was that area, not Los Angeles specifically, but Shady Sands, was that also bombed in the Great War? Or Hank, the burning to the ground, was that Hank nuked?
That's what they're saying.
Because it's fresh.
That crater that they were standing on the lip of is a newer crater than the Great War crater 200 years old.
Right. Funny thing is, too, you ask if Shady Sands was nuked. And like in the original location, like we talked last week, where Shady Sands really was, no, it wasn't nuked. But if it was here, like this close to LA, we saw at least 4 nukes go off in the intro there around the area. So it would have been nuked back then, too.
And we talked a couple of episodes ago about the whole, like the timeline with the fall of Shady Sands on the board and stuff. And, we talked about, so what exactly was the fall of Shady Sands? Like, was it just the government pulling out?
Do you have a new idea?
Was there some kind of famine? Well, no, not so much a new idea, but if I was thinking it couldn't have been that bad. Maybe just the government pulling out was it, but Moldaver's talking about how idyllic Shady Sands was right before Hank did this, and they're showing flashback scenes, and there's like a streetcar running, and it looks like a nice little.
For better or worse, it was civilization. We know that about the NCR from New Vegas and the other games coming up, that it was still the wasteland. There was still politics and humanity with all its good and bad. But Shady Sands was a functioning city at the heart of the NCR. So I do think Moldaver is overselling it here, because this is what she does. She is the Flame Mother. She's been rallying people to this image of who she is, we didn't really talk about how she got the name the Flame Mother. I'm guessing she's the person who led a lot of the survivors out of the flames of what happened to Shady Sands, that she actually got there and she helped lead people from that place to kind of reestablish themselves and slowly rally people. That's what I'm guessing. Like, why would they call her the Flame Mother unless she kind of emerged from the flames to save them or help them?
I was wondering that too. I sort of had a little list of questions that I would hope to be answered in next season. I was going to maybe save for
Okay, yeah, let's
towards the
save
end.
that for the end. Yeah.
But that was one of the questions is what's the deal with the Flame Mother? Yeah.
That's my guess there, but it could be it could be something like that. It could be that she was maybe one of the leaders at Shady Sands because she is obviously a leader now. Maybe she even was back then. And so when people were surprised she survived in the flames, that's why she got the name.
But I like your theory there, though, of just leading them out of that. Yeah.
So then Moldaver goes on to say, you know what you brought me? This is cold fusion. And we know that previously her company had worked on cold fusion that was then taken over by Vault-Tec. The way she talked about it, it wasn't necessarily 100% complete, but close to it. But it seems like now what she has here is 100% complete. And a strong kind of cold fusion, because technically the fusion that they're doing with fusion cores and other things, by not being superheating and by being like miniature and not superheated and stuff like that, that is technically a type of cold fusion, right?
I have no idea. I was actually going to ask y'all what is our stance on the concept of cold fusion, even being limitless energy and stuff? Is that like something that's even like theoretical,
Einstein theories,
hyper,
right?
yeah. And also we should just mention, just because all throughout all this conversation while Moldaver's explaining things to Lucy and all that stuff, of course, Hank is over there. Don't listen to her, Lucy. She's lying, back, interjecting, just leave. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Open the door.
Yeah, he didn't start doing that at first, but as soon as she started talking about the mother left the vault and that your dad went and took the children back and burned the city to the ground, that's when he starts saying, don't listen to her.
And also one more little thing is when I just mentioned she was having sort of the flashbacks when they were showing sort of scenes where Lucy realizes that she had actually even met Moldaver as a little girl, not knowing it in these scenes. But she's with her mother. She sees the vision of her mom and the son, as Ray was talking about earlier. But she sees a pendant dangling from her mom's neck right there.
And this is where Lucy's starting to really believe Moldaver. Like, at first, it was probably disbelief. When she came in here with the head, she just wanted her dad back. She knew who her dad was. She knew who her mom was. She knew what her life was. And here, her world's being turned upside down. During this whole speech, Lucy she's not moving much. She's absorbing it. She's in shock. She's starting to tear up and even cry a little bit. And you mentioned her remembering seeing Moldaver, seeing the pendant. And then you get the view over to the ghoul at the table we were talking about earlier. And I think this is where they start to zoom in on her and on her neck. And you see fused to her neck is the same pendant her mother always wore that she remembered, which, horrifying, once again.
It did. It had grown into the skin folds and stuff.
If this was 15 years ago that the bomb happened, has her mother been I don't know if she's feral or not, but a barely alive ghoul for the last 15 years that somehow Moldaver's been keeping alive because she cared for her?
Or was her face burned the fuck off in the bomb?
So this is where Lucy finally speaks, I believe. I think she says, "What do you need?" Or,
well, when she's here, she's my mother. What happened to her?
Right.
And then that's Moldaver's like, "I think you know." And then that's when she looks up. That's when they actually show the whole thing. And then Lucy's just crying. And right a little bit before that, though, when Moldaver's talking about the cold fusion, she mentions when Vault-Tec bought her research, the one thing that they did was they made it proprietary so that only a Vault-Tec minion could activate it. And that's how we learn why her dad's here. So when Lucy's crying and she looks over at her mom there in ghoul form, she's like, and of course Hank is still, Lucy, she's lying. And she just goes, just give her the code.
Right. She learns about her mother. She knows why they have her dad. Give her the code. And Hank is still protesting, and she says it again. Just give her the code. And Moldaver reaches over, grabs a little keyboard on a old telephone style, kind of like coily cord, brings it over for him to type, and he types in 101097.
Ring any bells?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Oh, well, we all know it. Yeah, y'all can go ahead. But I think it's funny that my Amazon, I don't want to say her name, Echo device, when I wanted to verify it, apparently did not know it. I asked, I was like, what day was Fallout 1? released, and it promptly told me that it was released October 9th,
Oh.
1997. And I was like, I don't think you're as smart as you think you are.
Maybe it was in Australia. Or like, no, because
Oh,
it would be
could
the next
be.
day in Australia. No, I'm backwards.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, but then I was like, okay, I know this is it. October 10th. So I got online, looked it up, and of course, 10/10/97, the original release date of Fallout 1.
Only one day off. I think Alexa did pretty good. We're talking about hundreds of years here. So she puts, the code goes in, the input, and it starts to activate. And you've got just cool effects swirling.
I was actually hoping too, like, because they have an access code, which that's what he entered, but then there's also an employee ID number. And I was wondering what a significant number that was going to be, but then they didn't show that number.
Yeah, it cut away.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Speaking of which, after this starts and the cold fusion starts to activate, it switches back to Norm and Bud. And you got a picture here, Andrew, that you saved of the console, the terminal that Norm was looking at. And so we recognize some of the names on here. So there's an area on the left that says status reactivated. And it's listing Patricia Peters, Alexander Romer, some of the other names that we saw. Obviously, Betty and Hank and Stephanie are on there, one people we know. And if you cross-reference this with the list of people who had been overseers before, when Norm looked that up, you'd see a lot of them were the same. Now, I don't think that's probably everybody that's been reactivated, but it could be one of two things. It could be that's everybody that's reactivated, and so everybody from Vault 31 that has been sent over into the other vaults did become overseer. Or like we were suspecting before, that because every 3 years they sometimes trade food or people or things, that there are more. I feel like there are like probably 15, 20 pods empty, right? So there's probably at least 15, 20 people that have gone over to the vault.
Yeah, I'm seeing if it says like screen 2 of 7 or something like that.
Then on the dormant side, the other side is marked dormant. There's probably, I don't know, 20 names listed.
Something like that, maybe.
But I hope that there's multiple pages, because there's obviously way more pods than
Well,
that.
Right. The hallway is almost infinite.
I wonder, it could definitely be pages or like a section or something, or maybe those are pods, ones designated for Vault 33 or something, because I noticed like the very last 3 names that were
all Vault 33, yeah.
Yeah, they all went to Vault 33, and I would have expected them to be interspersed, I guess, with other names we might not have recognized that went to Vault 32.
Betty, when we saw her, Betty as the secretary would have been at least 30 there. And she's probably not over 70 now. You know what I mean? And we know Hank has been there for, 28 years or so.
At least, that's how long he was overseer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, so every however many years. So yeah, I assume there's more people than that have gone over. But I don't recognize any of the names. Trying to figure out like if the names mean anything. And maybe they do, but they don't mean anything to me.
Yeah, not really. What was Lucy's mom's name again? Did they reveal that?
Well, her mom's name is Rose.
Yeah, Rose.
Rose. Okay.
Yeah,
Like-
she's Vault 33 stock, born and raised.
Yeah, because she was the one that was through the intervault trade or whatever marriage thing that they do, was meeting Hank blindly, I guess.
So Norm has had just about enough. He's learned what he came to learn from Bud. And he says, okay, I'm leaving. Get me the hell out of here. And the door's closing as Bud's backing over his side. And he says, you can't leave, son of Hank. Which,
I love that phrase, son of Hank. It's so funny.
because Bud's just going with it. I think Norm is probably, given a little bit of time, is going to be able to hack his way out of here. You know, because we've seen that Norm's a pretty good hacker. There are multiple terminals here. But there doesn't seem to be an access panel or anything to open the door here. And as far as I know, Bud is in control. But, I mean, Norg probably just grab Bud, avoid the needle, and threaten him, and Bud will open the door. You know, because I think Bud cares about surviving more than anything. If he kills Bud, what's going to happen to Bud's buds? Who will wake them up then? So he could do that.
Experiment fails.
But right now, he's stuck. He doesn't know how he's going to get out, who's going to eat. And Bud says, get in your dad's pod. You're going to want to wait until it's safe to go to the surface. He's like, just for now, get in your dad's pod and stay there until we're ready to go to the surface. So he's going to let Norm live at this point.
Horrible idea. I would not trust, of course.
But yeah, get in the pod until then. Here's what I think might happen for Norm to escape. He communicated via Betty's terminal. You know, the Overseer terminal pretended to be her to get access over here to Vault 31. That's going to be there when Betty goes back to the computer. They were just sending some of the dwellers from 33 over to 32. So probably when Betty gets back, she'll see that her terminal is accessed and this was done.
have been compromised. That whole conversation.
Exactly. They'll notice Norm is missing within a day or two. And so I don't think he'll have time to starve to death. Assuming Betty wants to rescue him, I mean, maybe she'll be like, yeah, Bud's taking care of him. She'll message Bud and Bud will be like, yeah, he's here, rocking in the corner.
Yeah, I don't know how long I could stand being in the same cell locked in with Bud. I might go ahead and just hop right into the cryo chamber.
Bud also mentions here, when he says, go in the cryopod and go to sleep, he says, I wish I could. So you realize that Bud, if he's not crazy, Bud has been a brain in a jar on a Roomba for a couple hundred years. And at most, he gets to sleep. You know what I mean? But he can't actually go into cryo or be fully dormant. Ever.
Yeah, and all it takes is a mop to fall over.
Also, when Norm says, where's the rest of the vault? This is it. There's no way the vault is just 2 hallways and then this huge cryo room. I mean, when people are waking up, they need to have facilities to learn about what's going on, readapt themselves, get clothing, food, all that. There's also going to be tons of storage here, like we talked about, in order for the vaults to constantly trade back and forth. There are probably a number of robots here, a whole section with a bunch of robots that were used to clean up and set Vault 32. Like, it's another thing where in the show, there's still questions, but we'll get to more questions at the end. Okay.
We're going to find out that the back door of that vault is really hooked up and leads to the Vault-Tec headquarters or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That would be funny. How did Hank launch the bombs in the first place? Like, was he able to do it from the comfort of his own home? Or did he have to travel with Betty to do it then?
I probably just told someone upstairs to do it, Just, hey
Gotta-
guys, go ahead with plan 187A.
Gotta wonder how many people are upstairs at this point. In the games, so much of Vault-Tec is shattered. You can't really communicate. Everybody lost communication with each other. But here in these 3 vaults, there's at least some knowledge going on and some continuity. And I wonder if there's still more going on.
Is there any presence of Vault-Tec? Not really, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys, I gotta take a quick break. My throat is really sore tonight for some reason. So.
And that's great because I got to shut my dog up. I don't know if y'all could hear her.
no.
She is going crazy over there. I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay. So we are back with Lucy. We're back at the observatory. And her dad is pleading now. I was just trying to save my people. And that woman over there, she's the same. Same as me. And he almost feels like Lucy is choosing Moldaver at this point and believing her. And he's not denying it. Like, he starts to, like, Lucy, just leave, let's go. Lucy, don't listen to her. But he's not 100% denying it. And I think he can tell that Lucy's bought in now. And so he's saying, okay, but she is no better than me. She has done things too. She killed our people, which, I mean, she did. They broke into the vault. They killed Lucy's friends and families. Lucy knows nobody. Her dad was her world in a lot of ways, like the whole vault was. But her dad definitely was. I mean, remember in the intro, book club with her dad, games with her dad, science projects with her dad. Like, this was her life. Their relationship is maybe the strongest of anybody in the show. And now her world is cracking open. So it makes sense why she is tearing up and just kind of paralyzed, learning what she's learned. And the fact that it actually makes sense to her and she believes it. It's got to be horrifying.
Right. Well, and because, she's learning that he killed her mom.
Mhm.
She's alive as a ghoul, I guess. That's a lot to take in, right? If you're her. So
A ton. Yeah. The man you look up to more than anyone else killed your mother and maybe blew up an entire city. Even if she doesn't believe that much yet. But yeah, so dad's kind of pleading and trying to rationalize with her. And the generator starts to power up. The reaction is getting stronger in there, but it's still contained right now. Moldaver is looking at the console and going over towards the test button. But that's when there's an air raid sound, an alarm sound. And she looks up and the Brotherhood's approaching. Meanwhile, the dad is saying, I loved your mother, but she stopped being your mother when she took you into danger. That's kind of his excuse. Like, stopped being your mother? I understand that with his values, he's saying, I cared about you more than your mother, you and your brother. And when she took you guys into danger, I had to make the choice and I chose you. But obviously that's not how it really works, and certainly the way he acted was beyond. But meanwhile, the vertibirds are approaching and we see Maximus in one with Dane. We see others flying beside. We see the people in the observatory starting to rally, run around, grab guns. Some very much like Star Wars. Some guns pop out of the roof of a few of the buildings, pop up and turn around, and big old missile launchers. And an anti-aircraft missile goes flying out. Vertibird dodges it. It just glances and mostly misses. But a guy, as it dodges, a guy falls out, hits the propeller.
That was my favorite part of the episode. I don't know why. I was like, that is awesome. And you see him turn into a fine red mist and drift off into the distance.
So gratuitous.
Yeah, and it just whips into a little spiral.
See, if this was 76, though, it would have been confetti. So the guy falls out. Another vertebrate's hit. The vertebrates start to return fire with miniguns. And the one has a minigun, rat-a-tat-a-tat, and is shooting down into the courtyard there, where the crops and such were. And meanwhile, people are scattering, running to their positions, grabbing their weapons and stuff. Then we're back to the dad talking this whole time. I had to make a choice between their violent world and our peaceful one. Which, how does he preserve their peaceful world? With a nuke. That whole dichotomy of the Fallout world.
Extreme violence.
Yeah, and the choices made at the time. He is preserving peace with ultimate destruction. So Max is on the ground with the other knights. They're in formation. He's shooting, and Moldaver is getting her people rallying. You get the door. Something that was actually in the ad, the trailer for the show, where you see Moldaver coming out with a gun, and you see people kind of running ahead of her. But now it pans up, and you can see it says NCR above it. And the troops starting to clash. And they're running in, and the fighting's happening. A lot of bullets. The flag bearers come out, and this is when the music kicks in. And I thought it's funny because watching this ahead, you see flag bearers like, why are they running in with these flags? But I think it was specifically for this scene because you get the clash of the Brotherhood flag bearer going in there and the NCR flag bearer.
That's what I thought was funny. Are they going to like knock their flags against each other, or but they just sort of run by past each other?
Hey man, want to bump flags?
They're gonna joust. That's what it's all about. No, I think it was just for the imagery of seeing those flags flying while they fight, because it's not very practical. Hank's going on, and he's kind of parroting what Barb and Bud were saying earlier. If the problem with the world is factions, endlessly at war, make the world us, ours to shape. Hank is a true believer in this whole philosophy. Only us take over the world. That's one way. Not a good way. So the battle continues. It's raging outside, and then we come to inside, and Max is coming in behind a couple of knights. We've got maybe 4 or 5 knights in power armor, and then there are squires behind them. There's a bit of a shield formation. You can tell they trained for this. You know what I mean? The way that Max and others, a couple of the squires are leaning behind the knights and kind of in the gaps and stuff like that, like a phalanx of sorts. And as they go,
these knights are just mowing everyone down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What was that word you said? Phalanx? What'd you say?
Yeah, it's a Roman formation where you have them in a square together with interlocking shields, and so they can put up their shields for cover, and the pikes can stick through between.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that move in Game of Thrones, right?
Exactly.
It's also a formation that's familiar to tank battles. So the infantry follows along behind the tank, as the tank forges forward.
Power armor is kind of like a tank. It really is.
Yep.
So after they move down the hallway, you see a figure in the stairway. Zoom in close. It's the Ghoul. He whistles.
Looking all casual, conveniently leaning up against a little generator there with the fusion core in it.
Mhm.
Right next to the fusion generator. How convenient. Says, I bet you that outfit makes you feel like a big man. I know it well because I used to wear one back in the day. And he's just kind of talking casually, and they're a little bit shocked. I'm surprised no one's shooting him right away, but I mean, they had just cleared the room. So they're listening while he talks, and he mentions, thing was, there was a flaw in the welding just below the chest plate. I wonder if these new fancy suits of yours are like mine. And he's doing that. He's playing with his gun. He's putting in different ammunition. We talked about how for his revolver, he's got different kinds of ammunition, and he puts in some kind of explosive shell in his gun. And he takes aim, and before they can react, you got to figure the knights there in the power armor, despite what the Ghoul is saying, like they're not thinking that they're going to be hurt by a bullet necessarily. So they're not really quick to react here. But he shoots, wedges it below the chest piece, and boom, the explosive bullet explodes, and the guy crumples and falls. Immediately reaches over, pulls the fusion core before they can react. Now they're plunged into darkness. So they start looking. They're trying to shoot and fight him, but everybody's in the darkness right now. And then the Ghoul shoots again, and he starts hitting them. He hits another one in the chest plate, gets another. People are scattering. They're trying to shoot him, but they're probably actually hurting each other just as much as him in the
Well, they're
chaos.
lighting themselves up so he can shoot them basically by firing the guns. He knows right where to fire while
grabs a
he's in the dark
grenade.
and they can't see him.
He grabs a grenade and shoves it in the neck hole of one of the other power armors.
A couple of his grenades moves were just hilarious.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like 2 or 3. It was like one, there was just a group of them standing there. You see him like do like a finger roll, like he's doing a layup or something. And he just sort of like sneaks around and loops back around, stuffs one down the back of a guy in power armor. And he's just like doing funny little ballerina moves as he's like stuffing grenades down people's underpants, basically.
Does it remind you of reverse pickpocketing in the game?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be hilarious. That's totally a reference to that poisoner perk,
Right. Yeah. For those who don't know, you can stick a poison apple in somebody's inventory and they'll eat it and die. Or you can put a grenade and stuff in their inventory and they blow themselves up.
Ah, that's so great.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like he was kind of doing that. Well, Max is ducking and rolling and running away while this whole fight happens. I'm going to pause right here because one of the things I hear said the most about this episode and this battle here is that if the Ghoul knew how to do this, why didn't he do this against Max when they were fighting in Philly? Which is a really good question. I think 2 things. I think, first of all, this is new power armor. He may not have fought T-60s before. It was a flaw with his power armor, the T-45. So here he's giving the speech about, you've got this fancy power armor. Wonder if it has the same flaw. He may not have had thought of it. He may not have had time to prepare the explosive ammo that he's using too. He had already been in the middle of a fight and shot a bunch of people.
Right, yeah, because Maximus sort of appeared out of nowhere while he was just talking with Lucy.
Was the Brotherhood a presence in general before this faction showed up?
I mean, there were definitely some in California, but we don't know about locally in this area how strong their presence was at the time.
Maybe he then aware of their presence and then made a bunch of that explosive ammo after or something.
Yeah, he may have restocked and prepared for the battle. Max also was moving. Like during that fight, Max was coming right at him and didn't really stop. But also, let's be real. The order of the show, we only found out about that whole flaw and that situation in that episode where he was talking to Bud. So we didn't know about the flaw back then. So the show wouldn't make it happen because he hadn't been told about it.
Yeah. And maybe he never intended on killing Maximus in the first place. Get him off his butt.
Incapacitate him. Yeah. Strongly possible.
Why wouldn't he? Does the Ghoul give a fuck about anything? Anyone?
Expedience.
No. So we're back to Hank. He's still saying, open the door, Lucy. Let's go home. Lucy is still a bit in shock, not sure what to do. But quickly after we're back in the scene, it pans to the door, and Max comes stumbling in.
Well, that power armor does first.
Oh, right. Talk about stumbling.
The decapitated power armor. That's the best.
Lucy, at the time, she's in shock there. She just learned all this about her mother and her father. What if that was Max? What if he got more armor? Like if she saw the Brotherhood Knight coming in, headless, dying and falling, she might have for a moment even thought that was Max.
Possibly.
But Max comes in right behind after that. Lucy. And she starts to kind of shake out of her stupor a little bit, but not really. Pretty slow. And Hank is, of course, much faster because he's not in shock. And he's like, hey, I'm her dad. Let us out. We've got to get out of here. Let me out.
And so, like, bang.
Yep. Shoots out the lock. Hank can get out. And that's when Lucy goes, oh, no.
Yeah, the gunshot kind of snapped her out of it. And she's like, oh, wait a second. No, don't let him out.
And, of course, Max is shocked. Why? And Lucy can't really find the words. She's just like, it's him. He did it. He did it. And Max is, what? And she just kind of pauses and says, Shady Sands. And immediately Max understands. He did it. Shady Sands. And we get Max for the, 7th time this series? 10th time? 25th time? The scene of him coming out of the fridge.
Yeah.
After the destruction. And just kind of holding his hand up to his head. And every other time, it showed him lifting his hand to his head and seeing the power armor and kind of smiling. Like, oh, there's a knight. He saved me. That's what I want to do, is save people. But this time, I don't think we saw the knight this time. We just saw the destruction here in front of him. And I think this is I think this visual, the reason they showed it to us so many times, is they're really saying this is the source of Max's paralysis, Max's constant hesitation and trauma. And obviously there's more to it than that. But it's almost like they're saying Max cannot get past this, or it's always here haunting him and affects everything he does. But it just seems like they show it a lot. You would think they'd have other... I mean, Cooper has all kinds of flashback scenes. Lucy has a whole life in the vault. Max just has this.
Kid in the fridge. Kid in the fridge. Kid in the fridge.
So while he's starting to react and he's processing what Lucy is telling him, and now they're both in shock. Lucy was doing her best of Mac's impression, and now Max is back to his usual thing, and they're just kind of like gaping at each other. Behind, you see Hank coming around, and he's now in power armor, striding over, turns around, and Max turns around and pulls out his gun. Does he pull out his gun? No, he just turns around to confront Hank.
He goes to punch him. Like when Hank gets up and you find out that he had taken that guy's power armor, he's like, Lucy, you're coming with me. And so then Maximus turns toward him, and it looks like he goes to punch him. Like he, like actually, like in his only exposed area, the head was gone, the helmet's gone. But yeah,
Hank just bam, bats Maximus right out of the way, cuffs him upside the head, shoulders. He hits the big thing in the middle and crumbles to the ground. So he's knocked out for a while. Lucy, at this point, sees what happens, and she reaches down to Maximus and grabs his gun, and pulls out the gun, aiming it at her dad. And Hank is he's just so bereft. And he's like, Lucy, you came here to save me. Look at what the wasteland has done to you. This is what it does to us. And he's still kind of pleading about how the violence out here is wrong, and he stands for peace while doing everything he's doing. So while they're in this standoff real quick, the Ghoul happens to walk in. And now we have the Ghoul back in. We've got all our main characters together except for Norm, finally. The Ghoul, Lucy, knocked out Maximus.
Yeah, well, and it's almost like they tried to make you think that maybe like she shot him because she's pointing the gun at her dad's face. And before you see the Ghoul, you hear a gunshot and he like jerks his face to the side and, like he was grazed upon his face by some kind of bullet. But then that's when you realize she's still just holding the gun and hadn't fired it, and the Ghoul walks in.
I remember the first time I saw this scene, I saw someone walking in the power armor, and I thought it was the Ghoul the first time. And I was like, oh, that would have been sweet. But then now that I think about it, he probably doesn't ever want to get back in one of those because of the like post-traumatic stuff from being in them before.
Yeah, maybe it represents stuff that he doesn't stand for anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do that.
And I mean, he's such a good gunfighter, gunslinger, and
no power armor, strong.
Yeah, exactly. It would slow him down.
Well, because I even actually wondered, I hadn't thought this honestly until this very, very last viewing, because he's such an amazing shot because he can hit the welding flaw in those knights in the dark in the power armor, and he's shown that over and over. So it grazes the face and he walks in, and I was wondering later on, we're going to get to it, apologies for getting ahead, but when he sort of lets Hank go, he says it's easier to track a stuck pig to ask it where it's going. And I almost wondered if like that shot that he put, because it hits the side of his face in his
100%.
cheek, if that's some kind of tracking round because he has all these ammunitions, that's how he was going to track it.
I don't think it's that, but I do think the glancing blow is to injure him. And Hank is bleeding. So that's where the Ghoul walks in and he says,
blood gushing out of his face.
He says, Feo fuerte y formal. Want another autograph, young Hank? And this is where the Ghoul comes out of the shadows. And you get the whole thing. The Ghoul is telling Hank he's alive now, which Hank had no idea. So everybody's getting revelations. Hank finally has a revelation too.
Another autograph there, young Hank.
And he says, before I kill you, I've waited 200 years to ask someone one question. And the Ghoul says, where's my fucking family? And like, what a moment. Hank freezes and looks at him, pauses for a minute, and then takes off. He doesn't say anything, does he, on the way out? He just has like there's a moment of decision.
Turns around and runs, yeah.
And he jumps off and does a little jetpack thing out of his, hands.
It's a good power armor move. We know the Ghoul's motivation now more than we did before. That whatever happened, because we don't know what happened between that scene at the very beginning of the show. We don't know where his wife is, where his daughter is. The assumption is, if his wife was part of the program with Vault-Tec, she could be in Vault 31 frozen. She could be part of Bud's Bud since she worked with Bud. But we don't know. And the daughter was with him. Where does she end up?
Yeah, well, no, just to say, and there was that scene like a couple episodes back when, with the deputy dogs, that's what he comments. You still looking for her? So obviously his motivation has been there for however long.
And so Lucy asks the Ghoul, why did you let him escape? He says, because easier to track a stuck pig. And he steps forward and he's looking out around and has his little speech here. And he says, war never changes. His wife was quoting the opening, but in this world that we're watching, the ghoul is quoting his wife. War never changes. Look out at this wasteland. It looks like chaos, but there's always somebody behind the wheel. And that's who I want to talk to. Easy to track a stuck pig.
Yeah, 'cause like that's where your daddy's heading.
That's where he's heading. So he looks back at her and says, you can wait here for the Brotherhood to come take this place, and they'll kill everyone here, or you can come meet your makers. But meanwhile, Lucy is trying to wake Maximus up and pleading with him because she knows she needs to escape. She wants to take him with her. And the ghoul says, you can wait here for the Brotherhood to come take this place, and they will kill everyone here, including you. Which, will they? Maybe, maybe not. If Maximus was awake with her to plead for her, she'd be okay. Maybe. But as it is, yeah, no, they probably will kill her. Or you can come meet your makers, because he knows he's going to the source, learning more about Vault-Tec. So she tells Max, I'll find you. Again, which is what she said before last time they parted. She says it again to him now.
Yeah, even though he's asleep or unconscious and can't hear him, but she's still just talking to him.
She gives him a kiss, stands up. The ghoul's walking away. And then you hear Lucy pick up and she points her gun. And here's a cock. You're looking at the ghoul and the gun's cocked. And he's just kind of paused there thinking. And it fires because she just shot her mom, who obviously mercy killing the mom there. I don't know if she was in severe pain. You got to assume she was. Why in the world would Moldaver keep her mom alive that long? Well, we can wait till after we finish the episode to talk about that more. But so the ghoul is kind of think to herself, again, Lucy stepped up. So he steps out. Lucy says goodbye to Max and goes out. Do we get another okie dokie from her here?
Yep.
She looks and she says, okie dokie. And this is like the most determined okie dokie yet. Life has really done a number on her the last couple weeks. So the scene cuts, and we're still in this room, but Max is starting to wake up, and you hear the sound of gunfire, and he's starting to get up. Lucy looking around, pulling himself up, taking stock of the room. He sees that she's not in here, Dad's not in here, and as he starts to take stock, he hears Moldaver start to come in, so he's around behind the side of the cage, and Moldaver comes in, coming back, clutching her side, where she's bleeding, and she activates the button on the cold fusion now. Goes over the table, over beside Rose, and she takes Rose's hand and says, we did it, Rose, and watches, and Max is watching too, as the power starts to flow, and the wasteland, with this very conveniently half-open ceiling here, where you can see much of the wasteland all the way to the ruins of LA, starts to light up little by little. Lights popping up in office buildings, lights popping up from the ground lighting and stuff like that. And the power from this cold fusion is flooding the entire grid in the area. And she's holding Rose's hand. So we get the idea that, okay, wait, she kept Rose alive because not only did she help her escape, but they were very attached. If they weren't in a relationship, they were very close, very, very close.
Yeah, I get the impression they were romantically involved.
That's what I think too. And that's why she kept her alive.
Dad nuked the fucking city.
Lucy knows enough, right? This is why she said, no, I'm not coming back. And Dad nuked the city because he not only did his wife leave, but she was with somebody else. That could be part of it.
Absolutely. Jealous lover, right?
I feel like if Lucy could figure out in 20 minutes of these revelations that her mother needed a mercy killing, I'm surprised Moldaver did not in the last 15 years or however long her mom's been in that state. Because we don't know if it was immediately after the bombs or if it was sometime between. The assumption is it was due to the bombs, but
yeah, the amount of damage to her head, you got to think it was during.
Mm-hmm. And the radiation from the bombs too. Like it just makes sense.
But also Lucy can figure it out in 20 minutes because she hadn't seen her mom in 15 years or whatever, like hardly really even knows her and can do that. Whereas Moldaver had been with her since that happened, and it's probably harder for her.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and also at that point, Lucy didn't know anything about what happened outside of that room.
No.
So if everybody's dead, who's going to take care of her mom?
Yeah.
And so she's tied up in that chair. She's just going to suffer. And so she does the mercy killing.
And that makes sense for all those reasons. Yeah, she can't just leave her in that case too. But it just seems like the right thing to do. if her mom's even in there. We assume feral because of the state she's in, the way she can't talk. But maybe she just can't talk because she's lost her tongue, and lost her throat and her vocal cords.
But she still got her goddamn ears. Did you notice that? Her fucking ears are still there.
Continuity.
Everything is
ruined.
falling off of her face and
Except-
the ears.
Except I'm guessing they wouldn't have her strapped to the chair if she wasn't feral.
Yeah.
Could be holding her upright.
Yeah.
Yeah, her
But
spine is about to detach.
She was snarling a lot.
She was snarling a lot. But yeah, you put a note here, Andrew. Amazing how many light bulbs still work.
And everyone had their lights turned on.
That was
and
my opinion,
all the
too.
light bulbs were plugged in. And that's just...
It was very dramatic.
No, I do like to have the lights on when the power goes out so I can see if the power does come back on. So maybe people did do that at the end of
Maybe
time.
not the first
Of the world.
spot during global nuclear annihilation.
Everyone turn the lights on real quick so we can tell when the power comes back on in 200 years.
Also, make sure you sit in a cool pose with a teddy bear or a bottle to make a cool skeleton.
Absolutely.
So Max is looking up in awe as the power comes on too, all throughout the area. And Moldaver, aware that he's there as she's dying in front of him. What do you suppose your brotherhood would do with infinite power? Maybe you can stop them. Maybe you can't. And how she knows that Max is one of the good ones, in quotes, I'm not sure yet, unless she witnessed or knew he came to help Lucy.
He called out Lucy, Lucy, Lucy when he first woke up, right?
Yeah. So she may have heard that, but either way, he's there and he's witnessing this with her. And she says, maybe you can stop them. Maybe you can't. Maybe all you can do is try. And you look down, you see the blood gushing from her abdomen. And she dies. Max barely has time to process as he's looking out when the rest of the Brotherhood started to pile in. Because the Pridwin is arriving. Like, even though you get a nice pan on the courtyard where you see a lot of them are dead, the NCR troops, some of the Brotherhood troops coming in are dead. But the ones alive, you see the Pridwin coming in, you see other vertebrates coming in for the landing. And now Dane comes in with a number of other, leading a bunch of squires and initiates and aspirants. And Dane comes in first and comes up to Max, sees a dead Moldaver and everything happening. And impressed says, is this their leader? And Maximus nods. Imperceptibly, by the way, did you guys have to watch multiple times? Like, is he nodding? Because it's such a slight nod.
I didn't go back on that one.
Yeah, anyway, he nods, but it's a very slight nod. It's just he acknowledges it. And did you kill her? And he starts to say no. But of course, Dane is way, way, way smarter than Maximus.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you did. And grabs his hand and says,
All hail Maximus, that
who
shall be night hereafter.
I love that formal talk. Dane is really good at that. It shall be night hereafter. And then all hail Knight Maximus. And so they all start hailing.
Hell.
Raising his hand up. You gotta wonder what he's thinking right now, too. Is he thinking Lucy left him? Does he know that Lucy didn't want to leave him, but he was knocked out and she had to escape because the Brotherhood was coming in? I don't know. Where's Maximus going to go from now? But what we do know is that the Elder's prediction is kind of coming true. The Brotherhood will have access to the cold fusion. He will be knighted after this, and he will be the sword because he has taken out their leader. So he's going to be respected and high up in the ranks. And will he be able to kind of control and work with the Brotherhood and guide them? Or will he kind of fall prey and become just like the rest of the knights? Then we see the Ghoul leaving a bit of a kind of mausoleum, maybe a sewer tunnel, but I feel like it's more like a gated mausoleum situation.
It was in a graveyard. So
Okay. Out near the Hollywood sign, which is now lit up for the first time. Hollywood sign.
Which is sponsored by Nuka-Cola.
Right. So the Ghoul comes out and he's hoisting the bag, looks back and forth, and he starts walking around. And then Lucy makes her way up behind and she is following him. And she sighs and starts to follow the Ghoul. And as she's starting to walk off, that's when below the sign it lights up, sponsored by Nuka-Cola. Like the power's just kind of flowing to the grid and everything's lighting up. I like the way that tied everything together. And it's playing We Three, My Echo, My Shadow, and Me.
Yeah, I thought that was nice when the three of them walked out. It was like, we three. And then the three of them came out of the bunker or whatever they were. The mausoleum.
Because CX404 is back. Yeah, CX404 was down in the tunnel or waiting for them.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe the ghoul just was showing some compassion there and kept dog meat safe in that little mausoleum, like you
You
said.
know, from his past, he loves dogs, and
Yeah.
The dog's definitely growing on him. When I heard we three, I was thinking Maximus, Lucy, and the ghoul. But no, you're right. With dog meat there, it's those
Oh.
three.
yeah. I mean, however you want to interpret, I'm sure there's
Mhm.
a billion ways.
And then it fades to another view, and you see a power armor and then an orange glow come over the horizon. And it almost looks like a nuke blast, but it's
Mhm.
actually a large desert sun, but it comes up like a globe starting to rise. So I think it must be sunrise. But it looks very much like the top of a mushroom cloud. You think at first till you realize, oh, it's getting higher and higher as the sun. And then there's power armor against it. And it switches to a view, and you see a Deathclaw skull. Finally, and then into focus, the power armor keeps walking, coming towards us now because the camera flipped around. Turns out it's Hank. In power armor, you see Hank's face. And then you get from behind and over Hank looking into the sun and across the landscape, and you see New Vegas. Next season, we're probably going to New Vegas because you go to the credits, the New Vegas zoom out here, and yeah, what an ending. So, questions, thoughts, all kinds of stuff. I know you have some questions you had, Will. Where we leave our people is interesting. Maximus going to be moved up to a knight, definitely getting a position of power in the Brotherhood. What's he going to do with it? Can he escape politics, or will politics take over? Lucy has just had her world shattered, and now she's following the worst person she knows. You know, the ghoul, because he really kind of has been.
Yep.
Yet last time they were together, the ghoul was leading her by a rope, and now she's willingly following him. How things have really changed. And so those two going off, where are they heading to? The ghoul will be tracking her father. We know what's happening, and Lucy wants answers, so she's going to be tracking them. But that's going to be quite the journey. A lot to tell there. How far is New Vegas from where they are? Probably 300-400 miles at least, right?
Yeah, it's a 4-hour drive.
So pretty solid drive to get to the Mojave, at least from where they are. Yeah, a lot of questions. Will,
Yeah.
what were some of the questions you had?
Well, so I actually didn't have a lot, and we sort of addressed most of them as we were going. But, Norm, like what's going to happen with Norm? Because we're sort of left with a lot of just cliffhangers, I guess, if you will. It's like we don't know what's up with Norm because the last we saw him, it actually sort of looks like he's walking to his dad's cryopod there. I mean, he's
Make it look
headed
like
that
that.
way. So we don't know. And so that's something that, Ganters will look to see that it gets addressed in the next season. Will they tell us what's up with the whole water chip thing? Was that just only a nod to Fallout 1, or could that be a plot point in the next season? Right?
Right. It's got to be. There's got to be more water chips.
Yeah. And then I was wondering, Moldaver died in this episode, she just did, but there were so many questions just about her and her past.
How'd she get there?
How did she get there? She obviously wasn't in Vault 31, was she somewhere else and stuff? How did she become the Flame Mother, like you said?
Right.
What's her past?
And that was 15 years ago, so she is obviously at least 20 years older than she was at the meeting in Los Angeles. But she barely looks it. Is she cloned? Are there clone Modavers out there?
Who knows?
Is she dead for real? Yeah, that's a good question. Because I almost feel like she's not, even though she obviously died right in front of us.
Oh, right. Maybe Brotherhood gets her and saves her just so they can interrogate her, and who knows? That's how they address these questions in season 2. Because I felt like they left us a lot unanswered that we want to know.
I just realized they did it with us in Fallout 3. Like, we died at the end of Fallout 3, and then with Broken Steel, oh no, the Brotherhood saved us. 2 weeks later, we wake up.
So they've done it before.
Yeah. Moldaver is dead, but there's just part of me wondering, she should have been dead before, multiple times. So is she a clone, or does she have something happening? I don't know.
And you talked earlier, you said, I hope Mr. House is in season 2. I was reading that they confirmed that Mr. House is in season 2. So I would expect so. I mean, they're headed straight to New Vegas there.
Is he in season 2 in the current timeline with Hank and Lucy and the Ghoul? Or is it just going to be flashbacks and stuff that happened around New Vegas?
Oh, okay.
Pre-war.
Yeah,
because
that's a good point.
Depending on the way you play New Vegas, he could have been killed in a golfing accident.
Yeah, and also, as you know, we didn't talk about that little in montage where it pulls out. It starts out, it's just New Vegas. Starts out, it's a billboard of the Tops Casino, which I thought it was funny. They're advertising, get your cryo suite. So you could buy a cryo suite. Maybe Moldaver was in a cryo suite
Yeah.
in New Vegas.
It's showing the technology is more pervasive than we realized. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's funny. Like, we didn't even hear about cryo technology in the Fallout games that I know of until Fallout 4.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as that camera pulls back, though, you get that it's more of the remains of New Vegas because you can see NCR vertibird crash. There's a Deathclaw a skeleton. There's a Securitron follow. So it's not a functioning New Vegas, at least by that little clip that I saw.
I hate
You know,
that.
that we saw.
I'm just going to say right now, if people were pissed about Shady Sands, if people, and they were, people were up in arms about Shady Sands, if New Vegas is actually destroyed or mostly destroyed, people are going to be even more upset.
Well, and then the other thing is that it's pretty clear that Freeside is not there.
Yeah, from the view, right?
Mhm.
Where the McCarran should be and where Freeside should be on the north side and around the outside. Because you had West Side, you had Freeside, and all that. Yeah, a lot of the area around New Vegas doesn't seem to be standing. Still, it could be draw distance, Ray. Maybe it just hadn't spawned in. We're too far away.
That's true. They need to use a more updated LOD.
Mm-hmm. See, I don't know. It does look destroyed from that view with Hank. Like, in the credits, I can write it off. In that every time in the credits, everything's destroyed. Everybody's dead. Like, that's just kind of the motif they go with for those, you know. But Hank actually looking, no, some of those buildings are extra crumbled. And you don't see Freeside. You don't see some of the buildings around. We'll find out. I mean, honestly, it could be a good story, even if New Vegas has been destroyed for some reason in the last 15 years. But why? Why do that? Why kill everything we love? Is it Todd's fault? You know, the New Vegas stands are going to say Todd did it because he hates New Vegas.
I think that was Todd that was the shadowy figure up above everyone in the meeting.
Yeah,
Andrew nailed it.
I'm pretty sure that'll be revealed to be Stanislav Braun. Most
And
likely.
everyone knows Stanislav Braun spelled backward is Todd Howard.
Oh my God. Like Cooper Howard spelled backwards is no. Okay. Other thoughts on the show, you guys?
No, just said I loved it, and the more I watched it, the more I liked it. You know,
Yeah.
because you sink into it definitely more. Like you know, we had some friends that didn't like the show as much in our Facebook group. Some of them almost made comments like I felt like I was watching a kids show
Yeah.
sometimes. But because that's sort of the way the Vault is, they're naive and there is this dark humor throughout, and I thought they did good with it. And as I watched it more, it made more sense and it felt more realistic and. Maybe I was a little misty-eyed too with Lucy when she was crying there at the
Any other thoughts on this episode, Ray or Andrew?
Yeah, I had one question about the Ghoul. Is his makeup mainly like green screen or practical?
It's
It's-
practical.
Yeah. Outside of they have to black out his nose a bit.
Nose with, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he said that the hardest thing about the nose was that there's white dots around the edges to where that is their cue for the CGI.
Does he see them or
And
something?
yeah,
with
so
his
he
own
could see
face?
it. Yeah,
That's
it was
distracting.
really distracting.
Oh, I can imagine it would be. I like the makeup effect. I think the actor, Walton Goggins, he's only like 44 years old too. He did a great job acting like he'd just been around for a long time. World weary, cool ghoul that he is.
He's mighty chipper. His eyes almost look too big and too white for a Ghoul. I feel like his eyes should be yellow or something like.
He's a
Yeah.
pretty well preserved ghoul.
He's like smiling and he's got these nice white pearly teeth. Like he's still in the cowboy movies.
And yeah, in interviews he talks about how they originally were going to have him wear contact lenses to change his eyes, but they decided in conversation that it would help tie the two people together.
The eyes
All
matched?
The eyes matched, and that they were able to better communicate that connection. And also, it was really one of the few ways that he could act using his eyes to communicate.
And if it was uncomfortable as it was, and he said it was quite hot, sweaty, and uncomfortable. I'm sure having contact lenses in there wouldn't have made him any more comfortable.
Plus, he's wearing like a leather duster and all that shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But he was the coolest. He had the best one-liners for sure. We talked about that a lot. And there were all the memes going around too about fellas. It's not necessarily your looks when all the nerd girls are going gaga for this guy right now and showing the cool. But I thought it was great too. There are a few things we were uncomfortable with. I still wonder about a couple of lore questions we've raised throughout the story. Did they need to move Shady Sands? And did they need to mess up the timeline? No, they didn't need to do either of those things. They could have done the same story and not changed the timeline a little bit, however they're going to work it out. And they didn't need to move Shady Sands. They could have blown up another city. They could have blown up the original Boneyard. I know they want the NCR to fall. I get it. They could have had them travel further and kind of relocate so that they traveled further and got to the actual Shady Sands. Like, they could have done all these things. I don't like those two aspects, but if those are my only real complaints, like super lore nerd, okay, whatever dweeb kind of complaints, then I think I really like the show. The tone, the humor, the music, like it was so accurate. We've called it out again and again throughout this, but it was so well done.
For sure.
I know the location references are super helpful, and people who are familiar with the Fallout universe are like, oh, hey, yeah, I know New Vegas. Oh, hey, yeah, I know this place. I know that place. Would have the show suffered any if they had just done it at a blank location in a place we'd never heard of, in a place where no Fallout game had ever taken place before, where they started with just like a fresh slate,
I think it benefited in two ways from doing what they did. I think locating it in places that everybody would recognize, whether or not they're Fallout fans in the real world, gave it more emotional impact in that people will recognize some of these landmarks, locations, what they're talking about. And I think for Fallout fans, as bad as it is wanting to destroy Shady Sands, it gave an emotional impact for us too. I mean, Todd said he was pretty taken aback when Jonah Nolan said he wanted to do that. He's like, you want to what?
Yeah, and obviously we talked that it was how well received it was by sort of everyone, not just the Fallout fans. And I think it ended up being the second most watched TV program for Amazon. And actually they just had, I mean, these are small awards, but they just had the Gotham TV Awards a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
And it didn't win, but it was nominated for just Breakthrough Drama Series, and Walton Goggins was nominated for the Outstanding Performance in a Drama Series. And so neither of them won. It was just nominated. But they have the TCA Awards are coming up here in July in a couple of weeks. And same thing with that one. It's nominated for Outstanding Achievement in Drama as well as Outstanding New Program. So I would imagine these are just maybe some smaller awards, but it'll probably get nominated for a few
Sure.
more.
I wonder how fast they're going to turn around the second season. They've made a statement saying we're working on getting a second season done for you soon. I hope they don't rush it, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me if we see it in a year and a half or so. I don't know if we'll have to wait a whole 2 years.
I mean, yeah, we want quality first, but yeah, the sooner the better, I feel.
Right? A lot of regular TV, you can do a season a year. So yeah, the actors have had 3 months off, longer.
I feel like that's the whole trend with TV though now, is these seasons are getting farther and farther apart.
Right, because of the post-production. So shooting on this show, which aired, April 11th it came out? I don't remember the exact day now. I think it was April 11th. But it wrapped January of 2023. So it wrapped a year and 2 months before it released. And that was all post-production and stuff like that. Second season will be quicker. Maybe they can do principal shooting for a few months after everything is set and then get it out in a year.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
they
a year and a
usually
half.
have a
Was it-
lot more concepts and all that stuff ready, right?
Mhm.
How
So
long does it
Yeah.
take to write?
And all their practical effects. They've got all their, props and everything already done.
Established.
And
Right.
even the digital stuff, models are created
That's their
now
build.
and techniques for certain things they want to do are figured out.
They hit the ground running. I assume that's the first thing that has to happen after the announcement that the show's been picked up. Are they done writing by now, you think? Since the season 2 was greenlit a couple months ago? When was it greenlit?
Yeah, it was probably greenlit sooner than it was
It's-
announced, but it was announced about a week after the show came out.
But they knew they were going to have a season 2 even before season 1 came out, based on what?
I have a feeling that they knew what they had.
they're hopeful, right? Yeah, they plan for it
Mhm.
just in case. Or
And
like,
no, they'd
Yeah,
probably
they
be
had to
outlining.
at least have the framework set
Mhm.
up. the direction that they want to go. I mean, obviously they knew with the whole New Vegas ending where they wanted to go.
Right.
So got to imagine that all went pretty quick.
Well, fingers crossed we get it next year. 2025, please. Not 2030 with Fallout 5.
Fallout 5.
Well, that'll wrap the episode, guys. I think unless anyone has anything else they want to say. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ray, Andrew, and Will for joining to discuss this episode. Thanks to Clint and Steven for guesting along the way. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us as well. We really appreciate you tuning into Vault Talk for these recaps and discussions. This has been episode 8, The Beginning. And while that wraps this season, I can assure you we will be back and possibly drop some tidbits in the feed between now and then. As a reminder, you can listen to our regular show, The Fallout Feed, on podcast services everywhere, and follow us at The Fallout Feed on Twitter, or check out any of our socials at ASA Podcasting like A Skyrim Addict, Butcher Baker Candlemaker in Space, Dames Who Game, Will Run For, and plenty more over the years. So tune into us there, and until next time, we'll see you in the wasteland.